Do you have
crisis,
cell
but a
phone
crisis
numbers for
in-
anybody? I'm willing to text. She's the only one I have. Okay. You need to get back.
Yeah, I'm trying to rally the chief judges to get some
Who is this? O'Brien?
some
Whose
relief
name is
for
that?
our
I can't see it.
employees. So I think I can
He's
get it
running
done.
late. Okay.
Greg.
The file that I have is like 232 pages.
No, there should be an email.
Okay, I'll go.
I was like. Don't want that one.
200 pages.
Okay, so let's do this.
Are we, so the sound system is working?
Yes, yes.
The sound system is working. If you give me just a second on broadcasting to YouTube though.
Okay.
This one.
Oh, not that one. See, we're getting the feedback. We're broadcasting. I just don't know how to turn that part off.
Okay.
Actually, I think I do.
Okay,
So
I can put my
that's-
hotspot on, you can join. I can
I
do it
couldn't
that
even
way.
get my hotspot to work.
Oh dear.
She was hoping to get.
Hey, Mr. Hannah, how are you?
I don't know.
Delightful.
Hey, how are you?
We don't quite have a
So I'm
quorum. yet.
connecting, but I don't have a username or password.
And then I just turned this off, right?
It's like
It's
reliving.
delayed, I know.
Okay,
I'd
now we
never
should be
I do Not
okay.
like the sound of my own voice either.
And then I can go here. and here.
Do you need me to connect?
No, I'm.
You're
oh,
good.
I'm good.
Oh, okay. Then I'm good. Oh, okay. Okay.
You should have it. You should have it.
No, this is working.
Oh, yeah, but Wi-Fi. I think you received the Wi-Fi. That's true. So let me see.
Jacinta, we have a general. I don't technically think we can't vote on anything until we get one more person here.
You know what? I can get on my
Yeah,
hotspot.
there's one there and there's one there. And then
Okay,
perfect.
gotcha.
I think we're
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
we're short one.
We can start, we just can't vote on
That
it.
is correct. Is this standing?
CSC 211.
Oh, no. Typing in would be good.
Potentially password out. 4 TI.
Okay, let's try it again.
CSC 211.
We had two people who said that they were not attending, and I know that Mr. Mitchell is delayed, but he'll be here momentarily. But I believe that School Board Member Jones and Mr. O'Brien should be here. Should be.
Is it done?
My best laid plans, I was hoping that I have a happy emergency at the courthouse. I'm trying to get back there by 4:30, so I was hoping to. And here he is, Mr. O'Brien. I could not.
All right.
I'm
We have six
always
now.
happy to see you, but I'm
Yay.
particularly happy to see you at this moment because you give us a quorum, sir.
How are you? Good, good.
All right, Ms. Green, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, we are ready to proceed.
All right, at this time, call to order this meeting of the Children's Services Council of Leon County, duly publicly noticed meeting. I'd ask Ms. Clay to please call the roll.
Yep. the microphone.
Daryl Jones, Terrence Watts,
Here.
Zandra Glenn,
Present?
Paul Mitchell, Carolyn Cummins,
Here.
Carmen Connor, Liza McFadden, Rocky Hannah,
Here.
Mark O'Brien,
Present.
Jonathan Strosholm.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next is approval of the agenda, which you should have received. Ms. McPhail sent us the a package earlier yesterday or today, but is there any is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second.
Moved and seconded, moved by O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Cummings. Any discussion of the agenda? Any objections? We'll show the agenda approved without objection. Next is approval of the minutes from our January 20th, 22 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? We can open it up for discussion if there is any.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second. Motion by Dr. Glenn, second by Mr. Watts. And any discussion of the minutes, corrections, objections? Seeing none, we'll show the minutes approved. Excellent. Thank you so much. Bringing us to general public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any comment cards?
We do have a public comment.
Very well.
You just call his name and ask him to come to the desk.
Kayla Norris Barber. Would you come to the microphone for the list?
Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. You're recognized.
Kayla Norris Barber, 527 West Brevard Street. Thank you all for including the community in the programming. No.
Would you mind? repeating it for the
Oh,
record,
no.
sir? Thank you. I was like, I don't hear it. Thank you.
Kayla Norris Barber, 527 West Brevard Street. I'd like to thank you all for including the community in your programming decisions. But I encourage you to employ an equal level of community engagement in your financial resource allocation process, especially as it relates to your upcoming FY 22-23 budget development process. At this point, I know we don't know what that looks like, but as it comes into focus, please include us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barber. Thank you so much for being here and for your interest and your input. The next person, any other comments?
There are no other public comments.
All right, very well. Thank you so much, Ms. Clay. Next is Ms. Green for the Executive Director's Report. Ms. Green, you're recognized.
Thank you, Judge Shostrom. So good afternoon, council members. It's good to see everyone again. I am going to try to breeze through this because I know we're trying to move expeditiously. So I wanted to provide you an update on the investment policy and plan that was discussed last time. Since then, Council Member Liza McFadden and I have had a chance to connect, as well as Council Member Paul Mitchell and I have had a chance to connect. And so after discussions, I think the best way for us to move forward is to consider developing an ITN for an investment firm or an investment company. There are two different kind of ways that it can happen. So when you look at the amount of money that we have, most large investment firms are not going to do that. You really have to be in the 20 and 30 and 40 millions, and we're at like five to six. But we also have the opportunity to look at the way that monies can be invested through the Florida statute. And I had a chance to meet with a representative of a company that does that. And the fund that many public entities are using is called FL Class. And so I think the way that we need to think about moving forward is to get approval from the council to start the development of an ITN, bring that back for you to review in March. And approve, and then get that issued, and let them really help guide us through that process of investing our money. So with that, we do have a quorum. Yes. So with that, Judge, I'm going to ask if you would ask for a motion for the approval of staff to draft an ITN for an investment company.
So can we have a motion so we can discuss the matter?
I so move, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. Motion by Ms. Cummings,
I'll second the
second by Mr. O'Brien. Discussion, anyone have any questions for Ms. Green or further discussion?
I just have a quick question. Ms. Green, will you please repeat the name of the company? I didn't catch it.
Yes, so, and it's not a company, it's the fund. It's called FL Class, is Florida Class. And I had a chance to meet with that representative. Now, there are lots of companies that can do different types, but this particular one was established by statute. That being said, we do want to use an ITN or a procurement process to determine who would work this for us. This particular fund is it is managed by a specific company. So I would imagine that that company would probably respond to the ITN. But after talking with Councilmember McFadden and Councilmember Mitchell, we are going to be hard pressed to look for an investment firm to take on our type of money. And the other part of that is, do we want to be in a situation where we are investing money and have to worry about the insurance of the companies in which we invest? What are they actually representing? Doing that due diligence where we could be in a situation where we have somebody doing all of that for us, and in some cases for no fee.
Mr. O'Brien, you're recognized.
So we're approving this process, but we're not approving actually the firm and for investment.
Absolutely.
They'll be bringing information back to us, but we're giving you the runway to go out and investigate and bring that back, right?
Well, actually, to develop an ITN to issue.
Right.
And then, yes.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments, discussions? Let's make sure the our record reflects that we've got Mr. Jones is with us. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that we started before you got here. I'm under a little bit of time pressure, so I apologize for that. Excellent. So there's a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussions? Any other comments? Any objections? So Ms. Green.
Judge, I do have a question about investment statutes and policies. I guess this is a question for our council. We fall under the same guidance and guidelines as other government entities, I would assume, as far as what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Mr. Rowe, you're right.
Yes, so there's a statutory provision that
Okay.
basically says all local governments, including a special district such as CSC, Leon, must have either their own written investment policy or follow the guidelines that are specified in statute. At the council's last meeting, the council adopted the second approach to follow the statutory guidelines, but certainly free in the future to adopt a written investment policy, which I think is what Ms. Green is suggesting, a group that could help us.
Right. So if we, by ITN, choose a firm, that firm can help us to write an investment policy that is congruent with the Florida statutes and congruent with what our goals are.
Very good. Any other discussion? Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, any objection to the motion? Seeing no objection, the motion carries without objection. Excellent. Thanks so much, Ms. Green. Does that conclude your executive director?
No, got a few more things and I'm going to run fast. So at last meeting, we talked to you about the March and April listening sessions, the community conversations that we are in the process of getting finalized. We have finalized those dates and locations, and that information is in your packet, and it will also be emailed to you, and of course is on display for the public and for the listening public. There are a couple things that I'd like to remind the council, of which I'd like to remind the council. Number one, because you will be participating in these, we have to publicly notice them. Number two, we do not want to do a blanket notification that says these council members may be there. We would much rather know which sessions you are planning to attend, because I would imagine as a member of the public, if I specifically want to speak with Council Member Watts, I'm going to make sure that I am at that particular listening session. So what we are asking is that you look at the dates and the locations and times, put that against your calendar, and let us know which ones you will attend. Either on Monday or Tuesday at the latest, you will receive invitations for all of them. You will accept the ones that you're going to be able to attend, and then of course decline the ones you won't. We will be using Eventbrite as the mechanism to monitor and know a bit better the public that will be attending. And it just helps us to better hone in on who will be the audiences there. And we can even provide that list to you because again, it is public. So again, just want to, and you will be reminded very gently and very kindly by Jacinta to look at that Eventbrite link and go in, look at your calendars. Be 99% sure that you will attend that particular session, because when we notice it, we will notice that these particular council members will be in attendance.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I apologize. I know at last meeting, we clarified the difference between community conversations compared to stakeholder groups or something like that. But now you want us to obligate ourselves for whichever meetings we will attend, because there's going to be opportunity for us to be engaged in the community conversations with the public.
Yes, there is an opportunity for them to speak directly to you. Of course, any member of the public can come here, but this goes to, if you'll remember during my process of onboarding, I really felt strongly that the council should get out into the communities rather than always having the community come to us. So this is kind of a hybrid, if you will, rather than trying to have meetings of the council in the community, have these community conversations that allow community members to speak directly to you in a little more relaxed environment.
But that is not the focus of the conversation. The conversation is still for the consultant.
No,
It's entirely about us and then.
absolutely.
Is this a part of the needs assessment process?
No.
Okay, then I apologize.
No.
Okay.
Now, that's
Yeah.
not to say if something comes out of these conversations that we feel would help inform the need. I mean, granted, the needs assessment
Okay.
has moved on down the
And I
line, but
apologize.
No,
I've-
no
I've got-
problem.
I've gotten the engagements mixed up.
yes.
That's my mistake. Because there's also an engagement that occurs open for the community with the engagement people that we also wanted us to participate with, right?
No, those were the,
Well,
those
how
were,
about this? Let me just talk to you offline. 'cause
Okay,
We are-
that's
we are
fine.
spin- we are
That's fine.
Spinning a lot of plates.
Because I apologize.
yes,
Maybe my.
we're finished with that
responsibilities are
phase.
My responsibilities must be running together. I'm sorry. Please forgive. Move on.
No problem.
Dr. Glenn, whenever you're ready.
Dr. Glenn,
No, I'm
have I
sorry.
been, have I been
Green.
promoted? Okay, all right. So next thing,
Well,
I-
I'm sorry.
Sorry about
Mr.
that.
Chairman,
Yes. Ms.
before she
Cummings.
moves on, I just have a question about those community conversations with the council members. We are cognizant of our communication in the sunshine, right?
yes, which is,
And if more than one of us are at any one of those meetings, I'm not sure how prudent it would be for members of the council to discuss, depending on what the issues are. I think we might be coming close to whether or
It's
not-
publicly noticed.
Yeah.
We're noticing them.
no, even if it's publicly noticed,
about things
it's
that'll
my
be on our agenda.
understanding that if there's more than one council member there and it's matters or issues that have the potential of coming back to the full board for discussion and for vote, then we are prohibited from discussing those issues. I think we might be approaching a fine line.
Is it okay if we only listen?
If we only listen, I think that's appropriate, but not, and I understand this was engagement, I thought, so I'm sort of leery about the engagement part if it's more than one council member there.
right.
Even if it's noticed, we still have to be cognizant of issues that might potentially come back to us for vote, and we can't really comment on it if more than one council member is there.
Exactly. So these are designed as listening sessions
Oh,
that
listening. Okay,
allow
that's
you,
right.
but we're calling them community conversations because you will have the ability if someone comes before you and asks you a question and you feel that you can respond, but not in as long as it's not something that will come before the council. What we don't want is to end up with you guys just sitting there and they're just people talking and there's no reaction. So there could be an opportunity for you to react, but there cannot be an engagement of sorts, if that makes sense. I've participated in these types of events before. The bigger issue is we have publicly noticed it. And as long as there is not conversation between two council members about something that is said there, then we should be okay.
So,
But-
so just, there probably is a little bit of education that we're going to need prior to these.
And part of the, right,
Well, I assume we can ask questions, we can ask for clarification. We're not there to make share opinions or provide directives. We're just there to say we're really seeking input. We want to hear what you have to say.
exactly. And we will be developing guidelines that that you will receive that gives you a roadmap on how to, for lack of a better word, conduct to ensure that we aren't violating any public meeting laws, public records laws, or ex parte communication.
I do have a question. Will staff members be in attendance to keep us
Absolutely.
clean and honest? Okay, I just want to make sure. So, yeah, so, you know, if you
So
realize
save
that
us.
we're, yeah, right.
We will be there.
Save us if we start digging.
Yes,
Right.
it will be our pleasure.
I think the real distinction is we cannot communicate
With each other.
with each other.
Mr. Mitchell, if you'll talk into the mic.
No.
It might, I never,
You were talking in,
oh, okay.
I'll get a text.
No one has
message.
ever said, could you speak up? I'm going to project from here on out. I think the important thing is that we cannot speak to one another in a forum where where we're acting as members of the Children's Services Council on an issue that we will take action on. But we can certainly, we're members of this community, just like anybody else. And we can certainly sit and engage in conversation and listen to what people have to say, ask them questions. If somebody comes and says, we need more after-school programs, I'm going to take an easy one, to which someone could say, tell me what, what is that all year long? Is it during summertime? I mean, those can be questions that members of the Children's Services Council can ask of someone who stands up and is commenting. As long as I'm not looking at, superintendent and saying, so how I'm going to vote on if this ever comes up is such and such a way.
Right. Or what we need to do is, so,
Yes.
you're looking at, so what we'll do is that type of engagement
Ms.
would not be allowed.
Executive Director Green, could I ask you maybe to work with our general counsel, give us one page of 14-point type double space
Right.
between the paragraphs.
Right.
Got it.
Short attention span theater, if you would, and
That's good.
give us some guidance. I know we will operate in good faith.
Those
in the
parameters, absolutely.
Exercise of our
Absolutely.
responsibilities.
Mr. Chair, can I just throw, and this is sort of a follow-up to Mr. Jones. While I realize that the folks are coming out to talk about what they think that, what they would like to see, what they believe the needs are in the community, as that's why they're showing up. I hope that we're incorporating those ideas into the needs assessment. I'm guessing that most of what will be said will have come up in one, way or another, but this is very much part of, remember, my comment was when you have 10 to 12 people and those people have been selected by individuals, you are likely to get a particular bent on decisions that are being made. These community conversations, to me, are the best way to hear what the community who's interested in showing up is going to say. And I hope their thoughts get incorporated into the needs assessment.
Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Jones, for bringing that question up.
I do have one request. As you notice these for the public, will you make it clear to them that, we will be mostly listening. We want to hear what they have to say, but set the parameters so they will understand we can't make any decisions. We can't, but I think if they know, what our parameters are, that takes a lot of pressure off of us too. So that's my request.
Absolutely. And so this will not just be an open session where we say, oh, come on up and talk.
Sure.
There will be a format to it. We will, of course, remind the attendees of the priorities that the council has set. We'll talk a little bit about the needs assessment and where that is. Of course, that if there is anything that comes out of these conversations, we'll provide that to our research company and then set the parameters for how things will move forward. So we will protect you in every way possible, as well as protect our attendees who are there.
Thank you.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Very good. Got a couple more things.
Whenever
And I'm
you're
not gonna belabor. So promised at the last meeting that I would provide a proposed or draft team member structure. And so if you look at the screen, you will see a draft team member structure for the rest of this fiscal year. Hit it one more time. Next fiscal year and one more time. And the following fiscal year. So we are looking at the current year, 21-22, the next year, 22-23, and the following year, 23-24. So a total of 4, 8, 9, 10, 11 is what I am proposing over the next 3 years, including this year. And so I've been here for 6 weeks and have spent the better part of that time drinking from a fire hose. That being said, I also have spent a lot of time looking at our sister CSCs, particularly St. Lucie Martin and Alachua, but I also did a little bit of a deep dive into some of our larger CSCs, Palm Beach, Broward, Hillsborough, Miami-Dade, to look at the type of staffing that they have, why they have it, what it does for them, and what I think would work for us. And so in this first year, of course, you hired me, and I think I was very smart to bring on Jacinta Clay. And then we also have our interim ops manager that we are currently negotiating into a special projects manager. So why? Because we still have the needs assessment that is going on, and there is an institutional knowledge there that is already in place, and I think we should keep in place until we get that done. Then the next thing is we've already started an RFI process for our ERP. We'll be moving into an what is it called? ITN, an ITN or an RFP. And again, that institutional knowledge is there. So that is why you see those 3 very dark blue squares, because that's what we currently have. And I propose that we will continue in a contract relationship with Ms. McPhail. Then later this year, it is my belief we need to bring on someone to handle our communications and public information. And that person would handle public records requests, our community engagement, everything that I used to do in my old life that I'm very glad that I am no longer doing in the communication space. And then next would be the director of program operations. And that would be around the end of the fiscal year, because we will have just embarked on looking at how we're going to do our funding for the new fiscal year, October 1, and that position will help to inform that. Once that position comes on board, we'll be in our new fiscal year, which will be 22-23. And I think it would be prudent for us to bring on 2 more positions. Let me put my glasses on so I can see. The first one is provider relations and community impact manager. And on the next slide, I'll tell you what that person will do. And then a contract specialist. As we get into that, we probably will be at a point where we need to look at how our finances are really being managed. After speaking with our contract CPA, I think we're in good shape. I think that that person can take us through the first couple of funding cycles, but as we get into 23-24, we should have money invested. We should be in a cycle where we are really, really infusing investments into the community. And I think after looking at our sister agencies, we need to think about bringing a finance director in so that we can move everything financial into that wheelhouse, including payroll, possibly even HR. And then that person would have the ability to bring on a fiscal assistant. And then the last piece of our programming staff would be program development and contract management, and then another contract specialist. So if you go to the next slide, I'm not going to go through all of this because we're short for time, but you will have this so that you can look through a quick summary of what I believe each of these positions would do for you as a council, for us, for our citizens, and how that interfaces so that we can ensure that we've got the best structure to be able to really get to the outcomes at which we are looking. So I know that was quick. I would have loved to have dived a little bit deeper, but I wanted to give that piece. Now, if I were a council member, the next thing I would ask is, Sika, how much is this going to cost? And what does it look like this year, next year, and the year after? Well, there are a few factors that are going to play into that. Some of that you will hear today. Our insurance, we have a presentation on that. And then we also have a presentation on some possible office space. And so I will be working with the CPA over the next couple weeks to really get the estimates on what the admin and overhead will look like, what it is currently, what it will look like when we bring on 2 positions this year, our next 2 positions the following year, and then our last 4 positions in 23-24. So I know you all will have questions once you look at it. And of course, you know that you can contact me. I know this was really, really quick, but I did want to give you an idea of what I have been contemplating.
So could I, before I ask for other questions and comments, could we talk a little bit about process? How do we get from the presentation that you've given us to implementing whatever the personnel plan is?
So the first 2 positions that we would consider would be included in the budget amendment that we're going to bring back to you next month. And in that amendment, we will be allowing for those 2 positions, of course, salary and benefits that come with that, any support materials, computer, internet, all of that. Hopefully by then we will be able to also include in that budget amendment office space, as well as insurance, which you will hear today. So once we have that amendment, we will move into the application process, very similar to what was done when we advertised for and hired Ms. Clay. We would do that immediately for the communications and public informations coordinator, and then look to do it toward the end of the fiscal year. So August, September for that DPO position, because by then we'll have the needs assessment back. We will have done our expedited funding and have a very good idea of the talent that we will need to move into that next process. Once that is approved in July-ish, so we've got trim hearings coming up that will happen. And we will budget in not only the current staff, but the staff that we propose to bring on in the following fiscal year, so that budgetarily we will see what that looks like as we go into those trim hearings. Then the same process will unfold the following year when we're wanting to bring in those last 4 positions.
Fair enough. Thanks so much. Any other questions or comments on the personnel?
Would you be
Mr. Watts, you're recognized.
would you be looking at or considering these folks coming in as career service under FRS or OPS? Are you wrapping that in with benefits?
Yes, so the idea is that they would come in as career service. We have gotten the opinion and have already started FRS, not only for me, but for any team member that comes into the council. I am a strong believer that my commitment to this is until I take it to the House for good, and I'm done. That being the case, I want to ensure that we have a package that is attractive for not only the best talent, but that they will hang in with us to be able to get where we want to be. So more of a career service position, although the council employment is at will, but they would be eligible for FRS.
Very good. Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd just like to ask, the flow chart and everything that you analyze, of course, it's not in my packet. I can't see it. Will you be giving us Will we be
Yes.
providing copies of all of that? Because I'd like to see it a little bit more detailed, especially the
Absolutely.
flow chart. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Mr. Jones, you're recognized.
I'm just curious, is there any possibility that any of these activities can be procured with private companies rather than to identify staff, particularly as it relates to communications?
So the answer is yes. But I will tell you, as a former communications professional, there is nothing like having your communications and public information person in-house. They are only focused on you. Their job is to ensure that this council is always kept abreast of what's going on in the community, that the work of this council is infused in the community, and that the engagement with the media is one in a place that allows us to develop a relationship where we get called before anything hits, if we ever have any
Well,
situations like that.
if not there, let me tell you what my concern will fall when you bring us back the budget. And that'll be the percentage that we use, that we have an administrative cost for running the Children's Services Council.
Yes.
And so when you bring back this full package of this complete staff, I would be interested in knowing what it looks like, comparatively speaking, in terms of administrative costs for other Children's Services Council. And I guess I should not have identified a particular area, but depending upon what the full administrative cost is, would give reason to where some positions may require, well, we'll look at that when it comes to us, but that is what I'd be interested in knowing.
Absolutely. And so, as I said, the next move would be to show you what that administrative cost would be. But in order to do that, I still got a few things that I need to have in that formula and work with our CPA to ensure that I get as close to that estimate as possible.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, you're recognized.
I agree with Mr. Jones's comments about our stewardship around these dollars. These are taxpayers' dollars. They're designed to benefit our community, and as many of those dollars need to be directed towards the specific needs of children. That being said, there are a lot of needs that have to be met to make this an effective organization. So as we go through that process, I do think that where there are responsibilities, we should evaluate in-house, out-of-house, but there's always, Daryl, the opportunity and there are a lot of people in this community who are interested in working part-time. It may be that this is a part-time individual who is able to dedicate 20 hours a week to address those needs. And there are a lot of very high-end professionals who find themselves in that situation where they have split duties at home and whatever. I think that's where we evaluate what are the actual needs and how can we best meet those. So I do think that's out there. But I do think communications, as an example, is a key part of what we do. There's a lot of messaging that goes with this, but there are a lot of ways we can skin that cat. And I think you're right. We've got to look for ways to be the most cost effective possible.
A lot of creativity in the room. Mr. Mitchell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I want to echo Mr. O'Brien's comments and Mr. Jones's comments, and suggest that this is the Children's Services Council, and there were a lot of people who struggled with supporting it because they saw this as another government bureaucracy. I was very moved one time when Commissioner Cummings made an appeal for trying to get the money that we've collected out into the community, specifically for summer programs. And I thought to myself, at first I thought, I don't think we're quite ready. But then I heard Commissioner Cummings' appeal, and I was like, she is so right. We've got to figure out a way to get the money into the community, into programs. And certainly no offense to the org chart you showed, none of that's into the community. Not one single penny goes into the community. And you're very good at communications. I like you playing a role. I don't see this being, sort of the governor's office where people are calling nonstop. I hope that we can look at the talent that we're bringing on, one, limited, so that more money goes into the community which is what the people, to Mr. O'Brien's comments, that's what they voted for. How do we meet needs? Employment is not one of those needs. It's funding programs. And so, Sika, as you bring these forward, if I want to make myself clear, I don't support that org chart. I'm not saying I can't get comfortable with it, but what I saw there is a whole bunch of bureaucracy and not a whole lot of, I can do the math. You know, I know what a salary is. I know how to do. You don't need to meet with the CPA. Just take 30%, and that's what benefits. That's what it'll cost you above and beyond someone's salary to pay for their benefits and kind of their administrative, just rough numbers. And then I look and I say, we only had, this year, $7 million. Next year, maybe 10 million. And it seems like property values are going up. So our numbers are going to go up. But that's not enough. And I just don't want this to be about the adults running the program, but rather the program making an impact on those children and their families, and really kind of getting to Commissioner Cummings, what you changed my mind, which doesn't happen very often. And I was like, she is right. So I'm not saying no, I'm just saying, please don't get too far ahead of the game here without kind of bringing it back to the council. So all of us have the benefit of one another's comments on it.
Well,
Absolutely.
If I
Well,
may continue.
Mr. Jones, you're recognized.
Again, I'm looking for we are not reinventing the wheel in Leon County. And I'm certain that other CSCs, as you described in your initial comments, informed the organizational chart that you brought before us. We're in similar counties and similar jurisdictions. To get the job done, that is what they have provided. For me, my concern is, as a economic development professional, where there's opportunity for us to procure services and we have economic impact beyond just salaries, is a reason why I ask, because we find that oftentimes is a far more efficient and cost-preventative measure to still get the same types of services that you require to get the job done. And I regret having used communications, my fellow English major. I am remiss in that. I should have known better than to go for language. But my point is that in some of those services, there are procurement, some of those services can be procured for you to have the same effect that may bring about the cost savings to bring down administrative costs. But I wouldn't want to harangue you and saying how you best operate based upon what you've seen in other jurisdictions. So I just wanted to clarify my perspective and why I made the comments that I made.
Thank you so
Yes,
much,
no
Mr. Jones. So
problem.
let me just, a little worried that I'm going to be the voice of profligate bureaucracy, but the council has to be both effective and accountable. And those values come at an expense. And we have the Mr. Mitchell's and the Mr. O'Brien's and the Mr. Joneses of the world on the council to ensure our partial, I mean, for everything else too, but to help us to ensure those efficiencies. We also have to ensure, man, we can't do it on there's things that we won't be able to do on the cheap. We're going to have to make some hard decisions. We're going to have to make some hard calls, and I continue to appreciate the work that we do together. It's tough because accountability and effectiveness don't come free. I'm sorry, Mr. Hanna, you're recognized.
No, I think we're all on the same page. You know, I inherited a large organization that, in my opinion, was fat, was top heavy, and have worked hard over the last 5 years to try to to trim at the top, to focus on what are the essential services that the district must be able to provide our schools to operate the organization, as opposed to just having positions for the sake of having positions.
That's right.
And although I somewhat agree with Mr. Jones, we could certainly look at other children's services council, but they might not have the same philosophy. I mean, they may be okay with funding 10, 11, 12, 20 positions and having 25 or 30% of their revenue going to staff, internal staff. And that may be okay with them. But I can assure you that I am also of the opinion that if we have positions or we are creating positions internally, that there needs to be a strong justification as to why there is a need for us to employ people within our organization. And if we prove, Ms. Green, if you prove and show that these are positions that are critical to the function of the CSC, then I would vote to approve it. But if not, then we need to remember why we're here, and that's to be as frugal as possible on the top end, while not compromising what our mission is, to push as many resources down into our schools to help, not schools, into our community. To help to ensure that as many dollars as possible are going to support existing programs or new programs that are going to help the mission of our organization.
So, well, Judge, if I may, so of course, I absolutely understand and appreciate and agree that we want as much of our funding to go to our programs. And so that did not fall faint on me as I looked at other children's services councils that are similarly financed and similarly organized. When I looked at the putting this together, let me say that, of course, none of this will happen without going before you all and without the approval to be able to move forward. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I think that it's important not to let the title fool you into thinking it's someone sitting behind a desk and that is bureaucracy and that is bureaucratic. In the 6 weeks that I've been here, sitting behind a desk is not what I've done. And sitting behind a desk is not what Jacinta has done. We have been out there doing the work that we can do, getting as much done as we can to try to get the structure of the council together. And so the expectation for me would be that anyone that comes on board, we definitely would have a justification for that. But I hope that this council also understands that 3 people can't run it. And I am very talented as a communications person, but I don't think you pay me to write newsletters and to do news releases and press releases. And so absolutely looking at what contract dollars can be used to do that. Again, this is proposed, so we may not even have, we would never look at adding a position unless we absolutely felt like we needed it. So I hear everything that you're saying. I appreciate all of it and just look forward to continuing working to get us where we need to be, for sure.
Very good.
Mr.
Mr. Mitchell?
Chairman, yeah, just one, I want to go on record saying, one, I am currently part of a bureaucracy in my firm. 2, I've run several bureaucracies. I did not mean a bureaucracy in a negative way. It's just a term. And I don't see a bureaucracy as people who just sit at desks. I was just talking about a structure, how people are organized, and that our focus should be less on the organization and how people are organized, functioning in that, and more about the programs that the voters, that's what they voted for. They want money into the community. And to Judge Sjöström's point about there are things you can't do on the cheap, I totally accept that, which is why I'm a huge advocate for whoever does come on as a full-time employee should be recognized as a full-time employee, should have benefits. It was my motion that they be part of the state retirement system and that they
have the rich benefits that come with it as a state employee. But because of that, I also think we need to keep the number of total employees to a minimal. So that's.
And I do have one follow-up, Your Honor, if I may. So Ms. McPhail is under a contract like Mr. Granger was. And is she rolled into your organizational chart, or what are your plans? Not that you have to tell her now, it's nice knowing me.
No, so currently she is on month to month. We are in discussions to do a new contract in the special project manager's position that is in the org chart. So those would be the 3 positions that are currently moving. But by the contract, there's no other way for me to say it, but I had her for 2 months. So that means I started in January. I had her for January, had her for February. And so I am in discussions with how we move forward, if we move forward. Yeah, that's the best way I can answer that without getting into contract negotiation in this.
We really like you.
Well, if I could offer, I think she's very talented. So if there's a way to keep her, I would offer a suggestion. You might want to find a way to keep her.
Thank you.
Thank you all so
All
much.
right,
Ms. Green, anything else?
one last thing, I'm sorry. So the last thing is, and now I don't even know if I need to do this presentation, is proposed office space. And so we have been working with Structure, a commercial real estate firm, brokerage firm, and Daniel Wagner and George Banks are here to do a very brief presentation on what we have discovered, kind of give you comps, just so you have an idea of what we're looking at. I will tell you, and I was able to talk with Mr. Mitchell yesterday. I do feel like we need office space, and keeping that footprint small, but allowing us to have a footprint in this community that I think is important, being in the capital city and with the work that we will do. So I believe that we have been very judicious in looking at what that space would be, what it possibly would cost. And so if you'll allow, I'd like to have Daniel and George come up and give you a brief presentation on what we've discovered.
Excellent, please do. Daniel and George. All right, hello, George. Thank you so much for being with us today. Whenever you're ready, you're recognized.
I need to say my address as well.
Your name
No.
anyway.
Daniel Wagner, 2212 Ellicott Drive. Seeker reached out to George and I. Our background is I used to run for a private contractor. I used to run the state of Florida's real estate portfolio for the Stahlback Company in Cushman and Wakefield for 12 years, and did site selection analysis and brokerage for every agency in every county for those years. I also have worked with early learning coalitions around the state and their site selection analytics, career source capital region, and all their site selection analytics, and going to and brokering their site selection and new office space as well. So she knew that we had that expertise. She reached out to us. We also worked on the city of Tallahassee and the TPD site analytics under Ajax Construction Company, and really helping them hone in on doing it the correct way and being very judicious, because you are trying to be wise stewards of taxpayers' dollars, and we get it, and we have that experience. So with that said, what we try to do, and I'll be very brief because this is something that you probably want to review afterwards in a little bit more detail. And let's go to that phase 1, if you don't mind. Get one more. So what we started with is really how you handle this is you kind of run the wide net based on more of a very general size parameters, but you really kind of take the whole community from a site selection standpoint. She provided us current and future growth personnel, which obviously could be changing based on conversations today. But based on our space program analysis, we thought that 3,000 to 5,000 square feet with a goal of being closer to 3 would be a good starting point. And so at that point, we pulled what consisted of over 33 properties in every submarket in the city of Tallahassee. Soon thereafter, we decided, After their review, discussions on a lot of these properties and locations, we had a chance to shortlist it down to 11 locations, further centralized towards downtown, not in downtown, of course, because of the cost there, being centrally located in the community from north, south, east, and west. So what you see here in phase 2 is that we dove a little bit deeper in terms of looking at budgets, looking at properties that were stable with landlords that had experience with government and nonprofit entities, had tenants in their buildings that were government and nonprofits. They understand appropriations, they understand funding, they understand turnkey construction, which what that consists of is that if you have interior renovations or improvements to do, that they handle those themselves as part of their annual rent, and it's rolled into their annual rent. So you're not having to come out of pocket additional budget dollars that have to be approved. So everything is turnkey, and all operating expenses are also included, meaning that your all your taxes, insurance, management, utilities, your janitorial, your pest control, your light bulb fixes, everything is included in your rent. So again, it's one cost, no surprises. So we took all those into account and then listened to Sika and her team. We pulled at these 11 properties and we dove in and reviewed each and every one of them based on those parameters, and then did tours thereafter on about 75% of those locations. And that was in the map as well. The ones we did tour, we circled. You can get to the next slide. The one that she had honed in on as a primary target, doesn't mean it's the final target, but it's a primary target, was a location off of St. Augustine Road that used to be a former Department of Education vocational rehab headquarters for many, many years before they moved to the Turlington building. Since then, Veterans Affairs and Fish and Wildlife has located their operations into this particular building. It's owned by an institutional group out of Detroit and West Palm with institutional capital. So they are liquid in terms of funding. They also self-manage the property and they have on-site management of the property. So just like we do with other locations, we want to answer all the questions. So what we did is based on multiple site visits with her team and taking a look at floor plans. If you want to go to the next slide, we designated that in this particular location, the area that is shaded, which equates to about 3,900 square feet, was the area that we would like to do test fits and be able to find out exactly what type of interior renovations would be required, the timing of those, and the cost that the landlord would bear in terms of getting that and being able to offer a turnkey full service lease rate for consideration and then put into the budget as well for review by your committee members here. So in doing so, you can go probably 2 more slides. This is the test fit that was completed. It was completed by a licensed Florida architect based here locally, Barnett Franzak, and they came in through about 4 different variations, ended up with this particular location that hit all the parameters and all the goals and objectives of Sika and her team in terms of space programming, offices, a training area, obviously a break area, storage, copy areas, the very basic support areas and personnel areas. At that point, we engaged multiple GCs to price the interior renovation based on the as-built, transitioning into this test fit. And the lowest cost of which the landlord would bear, I think, came at around $100,000. So he would handle that interior construction. He then would roll that into the rent rate that would be offered into Sika and her team if approved. And so we went down that road again because we just want to have all the numbers. So eventually she can present to your team and be able to get them approved as well. So if we do that, there's 2 different variations. We did a 5-year scenario, and just for interest, we did a 7-year scenario to see if there was much benefit at all. Now it's hard to see these numbers, and like Mr. Mitchell did earlier, you probably have to walk up with glasses on to take a look at them. But again, I'm sure these packages will be delivered to each and every one of you. And you'll see that based on the cost parameters, of the offer from this landlord based on the weighted average of the 10 other properties. This was 11, including this one, 10 other properties, and the required build out, we assuming being similar, the size being similar. You see that there is a cost savings, at least as compared to comparable properties, that allow us to move forward if approved, that this was a low-cost option for the Children's Services Council of Leon County.
Can you please share the numbers? Because I didn't see that. I just saw the rate.
Okay.
So the 5 year versus 7 years.
All right. Do you mind if I?
Please.
Yeah.
You can take. Daniel, hold on. We're going to give you the mic.
Thank you. So effectively here, this is the same spreadsheet that we've used. I used when I used the state of Florida when we had to do these similar analysis and approval processes. Is that we come here, you have your square footages for each term. You have your full service rental rate, which includes all operating expenses as explained before, and any annual escalations thereafter. So this is a full look at it, not just year one. And then a lot of times when you do interior renovations, for some of those who are familiar with office-based renovations, you have a construction amortization where a lot of times landlords will amortize or add to the rate, rental rate, whatever it costs for them to build out the space. So in terms of the offer that was made on a 5-year by this particular landlord, the $100,000 is already included in that rate. That the dollars come here. First year was $78,500. It goes down with the year 5 being $86,700 for a total of $413,000 over a 5-year span. That's a net present value of $386,000 per square foot. That ends up being less than $20 a foot for some of those who have that. In comparison, the comparable rates based on the other 11 properties, inclusive of the construction and amortization of a similar amount, just trying to get apples to apples. Actually trying to be conservative, thinking that these landlords, in particular office environment we're in, would not amortize the entire $100,000, but would probably give at least half of it as an allowance and not add the entire amount. Again, just being conservative. And what we found out is they had $95,000 as the first year annual, with the total being $502 compared to $413 over a 5-year stint. So that's on a 5-year. 7-year, it's a similar story. We can go over those numbers if you want to go over those numbers.
It's okay. Sure.
Okay. So here, based on a 7-year, the landlord offered a lower full service rate, again, inclusive of all operating expenses and the construction interior renovation cost being borne by the landlord, starting at $18 a square foot, which is $70,700. The total over the 7 years ended up being $540,000. In comparison, same size. The first year was $91,000. The total is $697,000 compared to $542,000.
Essentially, there's a $2 savings per square foot.
Essentially, yes, sir. So it's really, again, when we deal with government entities and nonprofit entities and taxpayer funded entities, you like to see a lot of variations so you make the best decision you can. So this allows for you guys to be able to do so. If you start getting down to 1 and 2 and 3 year leases, what you find out is that you don't get the interior renovation benefit of that. Usually you have to be lucky enough to find a space that is exactly what you need. And so in this particular scenario, that was not an option.
And what is the location again? Where is this?
It is located at Old St. Augustine Road. It is near Blairstone and Augustine Road intersection, where there is a First Commerce Credit Union, the CenturyLink IT hub, and also the old department, I guess, current DVPR headquarters, and Capital Region, Career Source Capital Region is right around the corner.
So Daniel,
Yes.
we're on a bit of a time
I know.
constraint. That's
So-
okay. And so you will be provided this. We were supposed to have copies. We didn't have copies, but we'll provide you with all of this information for you look at. And as we go into the budget committee meeting, which we'll talk about as well, if approved, we will move into putting that into a budget amendment for possible office location.
Mitchell, you recognize?
How many individual offices in that 4,000 square foot layout?
There's 7.
7 plus a conference room.
Plus a conference room, a break room, a copy room, as well as a storage room. And did I say break room? A break room and reception space. No, that's ours.
And sir, I'm told Sika, I'm very familiar with this this building. I rented it for the Department of Education's division of voc rehab. It's a great space in terms of location, centrally located. But based on your experience with Staubach and the state, when it came to square footage per employee, per state employee, do you suggest that this is at 4,000 square feet for 7 employees, well, plus 1, I guess, with the receptionist, is comparable? 500 square foot per employee is comparable, or is it a little on the high side? I mean, in other words, again, if my previous comments didn't drive the point home, 1, I'm not sure we need that many employees. 2, if we did need that many employees, I want to make sure we are tight with a buck. And it seems like that's more space than we actually need. I think it's 350 square feet per state employee and that's maybe a bad memory.
So being the person who created that formula for the state of Florida,
Right.
And did it for all the agencies in every single lease.
That was a while ago because
But they still do it today.
Yeah,
There's
the
formulas
tenant
that still do it
brokers.
for
Oh,
every
yeah.
lease.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's also square footage per employee. There's also cost per employee as well.
Right.
That's another parameter that's used. What we found out is that it really depends on the size. And also depends on your space programming. So if you're in a bunch of small modular units, you can get that number down to close to 200 if you wish to.
Right.
So it really is a function of space program. So if you need 7 offices in a conference room / training room and a break area and a storage, hard offices will tend to be on the high side. Now this, the terms of the conference and training room, it also depends on, for example, I've seen a lot of agencies, that are 600 and 700 square foot. As you get smaller, again, if you're 15 or 30,000 square feet, efficiencies in that ratio declines as you get larger.
Right.
Okay, so if the space program on this was, Sika came to us and said, I'm the only one that gets an office and everybody else gets a small modular unit. And we need the tiniest of conference rooms of which nobody will ever come, but just us will meet.
Right.
And we don't need a receptionist. We'll stick storage and stuff in the hallway. Then we could probably get this closer to about 200 to 220 square foot per employee.
And again, just going back, 1, it's a nice building. No one will look and say, oh my God, that's an unbelievable Taj Mahal kind of building. I'm very familiar with it. It's like, I think it's appropriate for a government office space. If the employees are going to be not behind a desk, but out in the community.
Sure.
It's probably, again, 500 square foot per employee is on the high side. And I don't know if there's in that building, I saw an awful lot of vacancies. And just in case anybody doesn't know, in the commercial real estate, there's an awful lot of vacancies out there. I wonder if we could, if we can maybe rent less. I think a conference room, a training, whatever it is, that should be sizable enough to hold however many people you think need to be in there, but maybe the rest of it, maybe squeezing it down. I don't want people uncomfortable, but I just remember 350 square foot per employee was, and that always included hard offices all on the outside of every one of those buildings I managed. It's just for, I don't know, just my opinion. Otherwise, great job.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments for Daniel?
I do have one more. So that's just part of that building then, right? So that suite 200 is just 3,900 square feet of building A.
That's rentable square feet as well. So also the state of Florida pays on the usable. So usables, the difference is when you're in a multi-tenanted building, your bathrooms, your common hallways, your things of that nature are shared. That's to the benefit of the tenants. You're not paying for all of it by yourself. You're not paying for all the bathroom. And so that's a rentable number.
And the utilities are split by the number.
No, the utilities are inclusive. It's not split between them. It's one utility bill for the entire building.
Utilities were wrapped up into those numbers?
Yes.
So is that a block configuration of 3,900 square feet is 3,900 square feet, or can it be configured to be a smaller amount?
For that particular layout, based on a program and keeping most of those hard offices were existing, Department of Education would have a lot of confidentiality, so they have a lot of hard offices in that particular area. And to keep construction minimum, that was about as efficient of a way without gutting it down and making it 8 inches smaller and things
that's
of that
part of the
nature.
trade-off.
That's your
You get into
trade-off.
A smaller space to have a higher TI, which factors back into the rent. You have a higher per square foot rent. I assume you're basically doing minimal improvements to the space that it's already built out.
Yes, but based on the turnkey by the landlord, it has no effect on the tenant, but you try to keep it down as much as possible because just like you being a building owner, you have to look at the return on investment as well and be smart with it.
So
So
the 18 includes utilities.
it includes utilities, janitorial, it's one check.
That's pretty good.
Yes, that's true.
I don't know what else. We rent space now. Ours is medical office space, which tends to be on the much higher side, but 18 for general spaces, especially if it's full service, not triple net, that's pretty good. I don't know what your experience is.
Yeah,
We
we
deal
do
with
less
state-
in the same spot, but that was a different set of circumstances. So I'm less worried about the price and more worried about the need for that much space. And I think to the gentleman's point of yes, that is only true if you want that exact space, but there is plenty of
Other
open
options.
spaces that may have a little more flexibility. I just want to make sure we ask every one of the questions.
If you don't mind me, so there's scenarios as well where we can look at less hard offices and more open space for modulars. So it's a half and half versus all hard offices. Again, this is based on information that we have from Sika and her team, but there's always ways to variate. You know, we're in the business, we see where there might be something that can get down below 3,000 square feet, but you're going to have, 3/4 of your staff in a modular and then maybe 3 offices or 2 offices and the rest in open area.
Right.
But that allows to get what you're talking about is more density of the FTEs into smaller space.
Yes,
And that's out there too. Not to say that, again, this is not the target, it's just a primary target. But if y'all come back and the directive is to Sika to go, let's look at some other variations that have different space programming, then absolutely, that can definitely be out there.
At first, if I could, Your Honor, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
First off, we had mentioned before about us potentially giving some space at Leonard Weston or maybe at Bloxham. I don't have that much space at Bloxham to give for sure. And I probably don't have 3,900 square feet at Weston to give either. So I support this. Under $100,000, we're getting a year. We're getting rental space, utilities, and everything paid for. There'll be a furniture expense and some other things, and they're gonna, I guess, roll in $100,000 of remodeling into the rent. I mean, to me, it sounds like a pretty good deal.
Commissioner
And I don't
Kelly?
want to, and I agree with Mr. Mitchell, but there comes a time when we start nickel and diming so much, it's, I don't want to sound like I do want to save as much money as possible, but sometimes I just feel as though that we're talking about 50 cents here or there, and it sounds like a good deal overall, it may be best to go ahead and take it.
Commissioner Cummings, you're
Oh,
recognized.
thank you, Your Honor. I think my question has probably been answered. I was concerned about comparables. And I think he sort of mentioned some comps depending on the specific needs of the council, of the Children's Services Council. But I think the overall number that you provided, you said it includes any specifications from them as far as build out and what have you, or whether it's not just necessarily walk in as is, but that.
It includes all interior renovations, all new carpet, all new paint, all new ceiling tiles, all new lighting. And so those are basic items. So what we try to minimize is a lot of hard office construction, supply chains like they are trying to build walls and knock down walls and do a lot of HVAC work. And anytime you change a room, you have to completely rechange all your HVAC and electrical. And that is very expensive. And so we try to minimize that.
Can I just do one follow-up? And so based on the specs that you received from Ms. Green, then this is your recommendation after looking at other comps,
But
correct?
it's actually her recommendation. This is just, we take directive from her in terms of after she analyzed all the locations and toured the locations in terms of the 10 to 15 different things that her staff was looking to try to achieve. This ended up being the best location from a site and from a field. And then what our job was is to then help her get a test fit done, help her get it priced, and help her get a negotiated offer so at least she knows what her budget is.
Can you give us just an estimate of timing to get it all done to where the space would be available for us?
So you're usually unless about 3 to 4 weeks on with the construction drawing is there's being minimal construction, probably 2 to 3 weeks on just getting architectural drawings that are suitable enough for the local building permit. And then another 4 weeks for permitting. And we're probably 60 days of improvements and materials, and probably another 30 days of her IT coming in and make sure everything works correctly and moving in furniture and things of that nature. So all in, you're close to about 4.5 to 5 months.
Very good. Thanks.
Nothing
Any
further.
other
Thank
questions?
you.
Any other
Nothing
questions or
further.
comments?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, very good. So are we voting on something at this point, or what are we doing?
No.
All right, very good. Anything else on Executive Director? Mr. Daniel, thank you so much for being here. Really, really thorough presentation, and I really appreciate it.
As long as you guys and ladies and gentlemen did not fall asleep, I did my job. It's not the most exciting thing to talk about.
We'll give you another shot at it next time.
Thank you. No, Your Honor, I think I'm done. I think that's enough.
Well done for your Executive Director's report. Bring us to our committee reports. First is Program Services Committee, presentation of committee recommendations, general approach, methodology, timeline, and evaluation process for community investments. Dr. Glenn, you are recognized.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So the Program Services Committee had an opportunity to convene last week. We met on February the 10th. And what we did at that time is we wanted to look at what are some of the guidelines that we would like to bring forward to the council. And the judge just, indicated what those guidelines are. We wanted to make recommendations for our approach as a council, and also for our methodologies and our timeliness, and how we want to evaluate our community investment proposals. So we have a lot of proposals that are about to start coming forward. The money is starting to come in. And then we started asking a bunch of questions. How are we going to manage these proposals? What are we going to do? So we came up with some guidelines. They are inside your packet. They're on page 13. I will go through them. I am going to do this as quickly as I can, but I do want you all to understand that these are our recommendations. And then at the end of this, I would ask that we do vote to adopt these, or if you have any changes that you want to make. So that's what I will do as we go through these proposals.
Dr. Klein, these were the ones that you guys sent us ahead of time, right?
Yeah, we got
Okay,
them.
good. So
Correct.
I've seen these.
So, okay, great. And I will review them briefly because you all should have been able to see them. I will go through all of them and then I'll pause. And if you have any questions, we can discuss and provide some information as to why we came to the decisions that we came to. So these are our recommendations as to how we think, the committee, and I do want to recognize the committee members. The committee members were Marco Bryant, who was present, Carmen Connor was also there, Liza McFadden. Daryl Jones is on our committee, but he was not able to be there, and then myself as chair. So we were the ones that I had an opportunity to come up with these recommendations. First, recommendation. We were trying to decide what is the most effective way to have a procurement for the proposals that were, or, you know, for the programs that we want to be able to fund. And we decided we wanted to use a variety of these different types of ways to solicit solutions for these. We want to use RFPs, we want to use ITNs, we want to use RFIs, and then we want to use what we call prize money. This was also actually Liza's recommendation. So with the prize money, instead of us, you know, laying out specifically what we're looking for within an RFP, we want to give the community an opportunity to come up with innovative ways to give us solutions to things that we may need help with. So let's say the needs assessment comes back, or the gap analysis comes back, and there is something that is needed, and we don't have an organization that can address that, or we don't quite know how we want to address that. We can say we have an issue, we are able to put X amount of dollars towards this, and let the community come to us with their innovations and how they want to be able to do this. And then we can give prize money for that. So this is to stimulate innovation. So, you know, we thought that the RFPs may be too, you know, scripted, the ITNs may be too scripted, the RFIs are a little bit different, but we wanted to be flexible in the way that we get the community to give us solutions to what we're trying to solve. So we wanted to have a variety of these different procurement types. So that was the first one. You know, we want to keep it open. We wanted to be flexible with that. The second recommendation that we would like to bring forward is that we want to really rely on our gap analysis and our needs assessment. And we really want to prioritize those areas that have the highest need. So instead of us trying to address everything at one time, we really want to look at that needs assessment and say, this is where we have the biggest hole in our community, and let's prioritize that area. Let's put something in place right now. Not saying that we're not going to give equal attention to the other ones, but we want to prioritize, get funding in those areas early, you know, immediately, and then go into those other areas. So we're focusing on really using that gap analysis as a guideline to help us prioritize how we make our investments. The third one, so we're definitely going to be doing the expedited funding within the first year, because we're really trying to get money on the street. That came up earlier in the discussion today, especially for these summer programs. So what we decided for the expedited funding, we want to make sure that we provide one-time funding opportunities to meet those needs immediately. And so those might be for our summer programs or any other emergency situations, like if there's another hurricane. But we decided for the expedited funding, we did not want to make those multi-year opportunities. If it's an expedited funding, it's one term, it's to meet that specific need. And then we will do other longer procurement opportunities for things that we feel is necessary. So expedited, short-term, meet the need, and not make that a annual, continuous 1, 2, or 3 year opportunity. All right, the other one, we do want to reserve a portion of our funding each year for a public relations campaign to be able to focus on connecting families to services. One of the things that we realized with the community service programs that have been happening, there are a lot of families out there that they're just not aware of services that are currently available in the community. The services are there, and the service providers are saying, well, we're advertising, but the families just don't know. So we thought that, let's get a community public relations program out, making sure everybody's aware of what's there so we can maximize those services that are currently available. So that was one thing that we wanted to do. We also wanted to reserve a portion of our funding for capacity building services within targeted areas. So there may be some organizations that should be able to provide a service, but they just don't have the capacity to do it all. They may not be able to capture the data that we want to be looking, that we want to look for. They may not be able to do certain things, and we want to support those organizations, provide technical assistance to them to help them maximize what it is that they can do to service our community. So we wanted to allocate part of our funding for capacity building. Another recommendation, we do want to designate a minimum percentage of our service-based funding opportunities for innovative practices, instead of only saying we're going to fund evidence-based practices. And we had a representative there. What was her name? Remind me, please, Holly.
Michelle Watson.
Miss Watson. Yeah, she is the CEO of all of the other children's programs. And she indicated that there was one particular community that said, we are only funding evidence-based practices. That's all they wanted to do. And they realized after the fact that they missed out on a lot of innovations because some of these things aren't necessarily evidence-based, but they are promising, they're emerging. They just don't have the data to prove it. So we want to allow for that. And we want to be flexible and have a small percentage of our dollars allowed or, for some of these other innovative opportunities. Another one, we want to provide some funding within our community to pay for navigators. I call them care coordinators, but we can use the term navigators, however we want to do this, to connect people. This was also something that we learned from those community forums. A lot of those individuals said, we just need somebody to hold our hand and tell us where we need to go and tell us what we need to do. They need those warm handoffs. And by funding some navigators within the community, we can just take them to where they need to go for the services that are already in the community or services that are being funded by our programs. But this will help the community maximize those services and really just take those families to where they need to go to get the services that are necessary. Another recommendation, we do want to use external partners and volunteers to help evaluate these proposals that are coming in. That keeps us completely out of it. We don't want any employee, any of our staffers, any contractors, and definitely not the council members to be evaluating those proposals. That just keeps us out of it. It keeps our biases out of it. It keeps our connections out of it. It keeps our noses clean, for lack of a better term. So we had an opportunity to hear from some of the different service providers in the community, and they talked about their experience with using volunteers and other external people to be able to make those decisions when looking at the different proposals that are coming in. Another recommendation, we want to have a mixed model of contract terms. We don't think that everything should only be a one-year contract. Some would warrant a 2-year contract. Some would warrant a 3-year contract. We want to keep that door open for our flexibility. So we didn't want to make a decision. All of our contracts will be 3 years, because there may be some that we don't need for 3 years. So we wanted to be very flexible with that. However, regardless of the length of term, we want to make sure that there are very clear accountability measures, especially for the longer term contracts, that there's an opportunity to evaluate those contracts periodically, and we know what those accountability measures are, and we're tracking their performance. Another recommendation is to use a monthly allocation model. So that means that the organizations that we're funding, they get paid monthly. We're not going to ask them to provide the service and then they get reimbursed for their time and materials. A lot of the service providers are low on funds, and we want to give them the dollars to be able to do the work that we're asking them to do. So we thought it was, within our best interest and within their best interest to give them these monthly allocations. And we also heard from some other organizations that presented, that expressed to us that that was the best model that they found that worked well for them. 2 more recommendations. We do want to renegotiate contract budgets on an annual basis. Every single year, if we're giving you dollars, we want to be able to look at that contract and be able to evaluate, are you using this money as we had expected? Do you have enough money? Or, how can we maximize on the gains that they've made in the first year and maybe give them less dollars if necessary in the following year? So we do want to renegotiate those contracts every single year for those contracts that are for longer than 1 year. And then that gives us an opportunity to really give a hard look at what they're doing, based the future dollars on what their performance has been. And then also, are they meeting their reporting requirements and things like that? And then last but not least, we wanted to establish a supportive relationships with these partners. The way I look at it, I don't want this to be like a parent-child relationship. We're the parent, you're the child, you do exactly what we say. We do want this to be collaborative. We want them to be able to let us know what's working with their partnership with the community and providing these services, what other support they may need, and what can we do to support them, and just give them the ability to say, you know what, if we had different dollars, this is what we can do. We just wanted to have a relationship with them. So we just wanted to make sure that the community understood that the relationship with us is a supportive relationship and we are in partnership with them. So these are our basic guidelines. It took us several hours to come up with these. I got to tell you, the meeting ran a lot longer than I thought we needed, that I thought we would need. I'm sorry, but these are recommendations, and I just wanted to share these with you all and give you all an opportunity to understand. Yes, please, Mark. Oh, Judge, can Mark comment? Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and delegate the running of this part of the meeting to you.
Okay, God bless you. Thank you so much. Mr. Bryant. Yes, sir.
Just a couple of comments. One, as a member of this committee, I fully endorse the recommendations as presented, but also just want to make a comment that if you ever have a committee that needs to be efficiently, effectively run, assign Dr. Glenn.
You got that.
You're set. That's all I'm saying.
Those are kind words. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ms. Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Glenn. And I'd just like to echo Mr. O'Brien's sentiment about Dr. Glenn. She runs a tight ship and she runs great meetings, very efficient. But more specifically, I read and studied these recommendations because you all sent it to us in advance. I love all of them. I think you did a great job. It's certainly a holistic approach. It represents a partnership, with the council, with the executive director, as well as with the service providers. My only question I wanted to ask, and hopefully it's incorporated, I love the annual review with the contractors, but coupled with that annual review as far as what they need, what they're doing, will we also be looking at whether or not they are meeting certain benchmarks, whether or not they're achieving certain services that they have contracted to provide to the children and families?
Absolutely. If you look at the recommendation, that's fourth one from the bottom, we are making sure that they provide clear accountability measures. So as we are meeting with them, there are specific measures based on the services that they are designated to provide. If they're not able to meet those measures, then that definitely goes into our negotiation with them, or even a termination if they're not able to meet the requirements of
I just wanted to make sure that was incorporated with the annual review of each contract.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. That's the
absolutely.
intent.
But I love it, and I certainly support the recommendations as well, Your Honor.
Thank you so much.
Question, Dr. Lynn, is the navigators group proposing that these navigators are our employees, or?
No, sir. No, these would be, the way I understand it is that we would use a portion of our funding to support or fund navigators that will be able to make connections between the families and the services and the programs that are available in the community.
No, I think it's a great idea, but I don't, who carries that weight?
So if I may, we would be funding organizations who would employ those navigators.
So right now, if a parent didn't know where to turn, is there a number they can call that oversees all of the services in Leon County?
211.
So it's called 211.
211.
211.
Is that the only one?
No.
No, there are other ones.
So I marked this one. I was going to not say anything, but I need to say something. So you talk about your one about the public campaign, knowing what's out there. This will be a good example. We have what our first lady launched with DCF, which is Hope Florida, 850-300 Hope. That is through DCF. You can call and get assigned a care navigator, or if you're in a crisis or get escalated to a higher level, that exists, that's in place. Just need to, with the marketing, like you say, these resources are out there. And so that any one of us can call right now, that line, and get assigned whatever our barrier is. We're trying to achieve prosperity or overcome a barrier, you call that number. And they will link you and follow you if necessary, you know, to address what you have going on. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think the interesting thing about it is that service is available. However, during the community meetings that they've been having, the community just doesn't know those services are available. And that's why we do want to have the public relations campaign to make sure that they are aware of that. And then to supplement the navigators that are already available. Just, you know, it's my understanding there's a need for more hand holding for some of these families to get them to where they want to go. And that's why we wanted to make it an option that's available. Does that make sense to you? All right, thank you.
Outstanding. So I think we're going to vote on this. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we need
Public
public comment.
I was
Yes,
saying,
okay.
saying that we're going to vote on it,
Sure.
so we need public comment.
But I think this is also an example. I had no idea. We don't, in a lot of cases, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And there's a lot of programs that we don't want to duplicate with our limited resources if they're already there. You know, so.
Well, in
I don't know
fairness,
I don't know how we ensure that.
Well, that's what the inventory is going to help us understand. We have the comprehensive inventory that's coming that says, here's everything that's currently available in your community. And I've already been like, I had no idea that these were available, but they're being listed, they're being captured in our inventory.
They may be available, but they may not be coordinated. They may not be coordinating them well with the families communicating. That's part of it as well.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Jones.
one of the things I think is critical is the fact that we would be ombudsman on behalf of the human services community. Here through our being able to communicate the variety of services and then equip other persons and to help people to navigate that. One of the things I'm sure anyone who's been in human services knows that case management is critical. And so what you've described here in terms of being helping to bolster already existing programs, the capacity building, all of that comes together to help to sustain the safety net that is critical. I know we'll get a great deal of innovation through the RFPs, and I love the fact that you're using a variety of procurement types and then also providing flexibility for 3, 2, and 1 year contracts, depending upon the different needs that will be identified in our assessment. It gives us the flexibility to really be creative to respond to what will be the human capital that I said that our community is rich in solving our own problems. And I hope that when we put this before our public, that we will look to everyone to school, our school districts, our universities, our community colleges, because there's a great deal of innovation there as well as found in the not-for-profit sector as well. But you've created a milieu that I think is really, really going to give us the flexibility to be as responsive as we possibly be when we get this needs assessment. I will say this, and this is my concern, and I just want to share this with you. I've been around long enough to have seen where organizations like ours find ourselves in competition with the providers that we are intended to serve by becoming service providers ourselves. I just hope that in none of these areas that we're making description as we try to build capacity for service providers, that we ever find ourselves in doing any programmatic activity. That it is always because we've seen it happen before. They organize, whether it's consortium of care or whole child, Big Ben Homeless Coalition, and then next thing you know, they were organized to serve everyone, and then they ended up being incompetent. Maybe I shouldn't have said that in the public domain. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. But so that's what I would hope we would run afoul. We would not run afoul of it. What you've described here is just really, really ingenious. So thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other comments?
I have one, Dr. Glenn. I'm glad Superintendent brought up the issue of the navigators, because to me that is one, it's needed. Two, they don't take up office space, and they're in the community. And the reality is that we're going to get feedback from those navigators who met with, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell as they're trying to address a need for the Mitchell family. And they're going to find either there is a place to have that need met or there isn't.
Right.
And it's instant feedback.
Right.
Again, I'm going to just keep driving this point home. One, they don't take office space. Two, they don't require to be a full-time employee of the Children's Services Council. They are our satellites out there reporting back to, SECA as the
No.
mothership of what's going on. And are the needs being met?
Right.
And by the way, if the Mitchell family was connected with a particular program that was funded by us, but their needs still aren't being met, that
Right.
they weren't performing
Right.
the services they committed to perform. It is a quick feedback loop. So I love the idea of the navigator.
So if I may, I want to be clear that it was not the Program Services Committee's desire that the CSC employ navigators,
Right. No, I
but
know.
rather, okay,
No, that
because,
was my
yeah,
point.
we wouldn't care
Fewer-
about their
Fewer
office space.
employees. Yeah. I love.
No, we
it.
wouldn't contract
It was-
with them
it was
either.
brilliant.
No, no, no.
It's good.
We would fund an organization
It does.
that would run a navigator program. So they would not contract with us. I feel like I have the pulse of the council in that we do not want to be in the direct service business, but rather support our organizations, businesses that are already doing that.
Let me ask one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Will, these guiding principles and specific recommendations possibly morph after we get our needs assessment back?
That's a good question. I expect that it would, because a lot of questions that we had, I just kept on thinking, it depends on what the needs assessment says, so these are our recommendations because we have to start making plans. But I would expect that whatever whatever those gaps show, if we realize that something needs to change, I do want to be able to come back and say, guys, I know we talked about this, but based on that, we're going to have to make some changes. And I want the flexibility to be able to come back and do that.
Yes, that's what I was hoping. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Does that conclude your, not so fast, Mr. Hannah, you're
Because
recognized.
I go back to what Mr. Watts is saying about these navigators already existing with, I guess, the State Department.
Yes.
And they connect with local agencies and connect families and children with local agencies.
Yes.
If the navigator program already exists and they're sitting around like the Maytag repairman waiting on the phone to ring, why are we gonna pay to create another organization or support another organization that does the exact same thing?
So it depends. So obviously, if the navigators aren't able to meet the needs of the community, we can do a couple of things. We can fund them to hire more navigators to meet the needs of the community. Or if they don't have the capacity to do it and they need assistance, then we can fund another organization to provide a similar service. So we're not saying don't support them. We're saying, let's look at what the needs are. We may need to fund more navigators to be able to meet the demands of our community.
Can I respond to you a little bit?
Yeah.
So we're gonna get a gap analysis on the needs assessment. It's possible the gap analysis will show there is no gap associated with navigators because they're out there. It may also be that the navigators that Terrence is talking about have a limited specific function. And like in my world, one of the big innovations that we ever had was peer support specialists in substance abuse and mental health, but they're supplied by a particular entity or organization. They're not out there generally in a program. So a lot of that, I think a lot of your question, Mr. Hannah, might be answered by the needs assessment, but I could be wrong.
And
I tell you what, we can test how good they are. Nobody say anything about what Mr. Watts just said. And let's see what they're saying.
Well, in fairness, the
Lay
First
a
Ladies
trap.
program it just got going. So they haven't been promoting it with PSAs and what have you. I mean, I tend to read the stuff coming out of the governor's office. You find out an awful lot that's going on in your state, and they on a continual basis will, push out these kinds of programs. But it requires somebody to, beat the drum and talk about them. So.
And I do
Good
want to
part
add one
about
other
it-
thing too.
Oh, I'm
Excuse
sorry.
me, Darryl, I'm sorry. We did say that we want to consider investing in these navigators. So we're not saying we know for a fact that they're not needed, but we want the opportunity if the needs assessment comes back and said, we need more of this, we want the option to be able to do that, to expand.
And as you
An
just-
example would be, I'm sorry, Darryl, go ahead.
No, well, I was just agreeing with what you've already included in your document. When we discover these things, because we said it's going to be a malleable document.
Right.
For example, if we find that there are already navigators and we already got a PR campaign that we'll have, help to amplify that those services are available to families. And that'll be critical, a part of us having a greater and longer and more sustainable impact.
An example would be, most of these would be complicated environments. I mean, these aren't singular issues that we're addressing. But say we want to focus on, just as an example, early learning opportunities, basically 0 to 5, 0 to 3. We can provide a lot of tools for that, but there's going to be a lot of social challenges within some of those families, and we're not going to be able to address all of those by ourselves. So that's where we could create an engagement with partners, services already in the community, but oftentimes it's going to take someone to help draw those together, and that's the role of a navigator. We use them in healthcare all the time. We deal with patients with complex multidisciplinary treatment programs. All of these have to be coordinated, and oftentimes patients are, they're emotionally distraught, or they don't know how to navigate through all the different areas. They don't know how to basically stage treatment, treatment programs. You know this very well, and that's where navigators come into play. And they can be very, very effective. But I can certainly imagine the complexity of some of the situations we're going to find ourselves trying to help these children and realizing we're dealing with a multitude of factors that are impacting their ability to advance. And we're going to need to find different ways of doing that, and we can't solve those all by ourselves. Right?
And if I may also add, the navigator concept could very easily be incorporated into the public schools as well. So while you're looking at an agency that would have navigators to help deal with children in school when we're talking about the mental health and getting them connected. So I think it's not necessarily about one entry into the navigator program, but rather several entries and several ways that the navigators can get to the families. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Excellent. So is there any public comment?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion then.
There's-
I
I
second.
do
the
think there's a comment from Ms.
We do. We have
Connors.
one public comment.
Excellent.
This message is from Councilmember Connor. Greetings, council members. In my absence, I would like to share my full support of the guiding principles and recommendations for the methods in which the program committee chair, Dr. Zandra Glenn, will present today. This approach, methodology, and timing provides adequate support and flexibility with a variety of means to ensure limitless opportunities for the children and families that we will serve. Keeping in mind our ultimate goal, coupled with the results from the needs assessment, this plan provides a platform to meet the immediate needs within our community while preparing for future services. Most sincerely, Carmen Connor.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Is there any other public comment? Before we vote, for those of you who are members of the public, before we vote, we always take public comment if there's any additional comment on this issue. Ms. Clay, any additional comments?
There are no additional comments.
Mr. Mitchell, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for putting Ms. Connor's comments. I'd seen them and I thought, oh, wait, okay. I would like to move the Program Services Committee recommendation for our guidelines.
And there's a second by Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Seeing none, we'll show it approved unanimously. Nicely done. Yes, raise the room
Thank
for
you.
Dr. Glenn. So my coach turns into a pumpkin in 12 minutes. You'll still have a quorum. I got to leave. Dr. Glenn is going to take over, if that's acceptable to everyone. But we'll move on now to the treasurer's report. Mr. Mitchell, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the council. I think this was provided ahead of time, at least it was in my package. You will notice that we have essentially reached the peak of our collections in terms of the property taxes. And we had a little bit trickling in at the end. But we've got about $6 million in the bank. $5,999,000 of which I would like to spend on programs.
Absolutely.
And that is the treasurer's report. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Questions for the treasurer's report, comments on the budget. So I got distracted. Paul, have we had most of our revenues come in that are going to come in?
Yes, we have. There's and you'll see next month, there will be a few late pays, but by and large, everything that we're going to see, we've basically seen.
All right, very good. Any other comments, discussions regarding the treasurer's report? Let me see what I'm supposed to say here.
Mr. Chair, I move acceptance of the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cummings moves acceptance. Is there a second? Mr. O'Brien, seems to be your role today to be the second. Superintendent Hannah, we'll let you be the second.
I love it when the superintendent seconds my report.
Any objections or corrections or discussion? Seeing none, we'll show the treasurer's report approved. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell, for the hard work.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you so much. Enterprise Software Solution Committee, RFI update. Ms. McPhail, you're recognized.
I will be super quick. There's nothing in your packet, so it's only on your screen. I'm just providing a verbal update. To the RFI, we received 7 responses, 2 of which were non-responses, and the 5 additional ones are from, I will tell you who they're from. Unite Us, Web Author, MTX, Blackbaud, and Oracle. The next phase of this process is to convene a committee to which Councilmember Watts has agreed to chair. The additional individuals that have been appointed to that committee are Mr. Eddie Gonzalez Lumiere. He's a CEO of Ruvos Technologies, which is a health technologies company operating here out of Miami and internationally. Mr. Marcus Johnson is the Chief Innovation Officer with CHS of Florida, Ms. Corey Melton from the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Darren Toston, the CIO at the Department of Juvenile Justice. They are all in agreement to serve just on the committee to review the submissions to the RFI and to help draft the work plan and guide the development of our invitation to negotiate on our ERP solution. None of these individuals will be serving in an evaluation capacity. This does not preclude the council member's role that we will convene when we get to that ITN process, very similar to what we did with our needs assessment process in developing our evaluation committee and a negotiation committee. We anticipate in terms of timeline to bring forth the work plan to you at your next meeting, but the actual ITN itself will likely not be ready for your review until April or May, depending upon other council priorities, because we're also hoping to get a needs assessment for some expedited funding out of the streets around the same time. So we're definitely kind of pacing that, but you will see that the next kind of iteration of that sometime in early summer, likely.
Very good. Questions for Ms. McPhail? Mr. Mitchell, you recognize.
How in an RFI, how can someone be non-responsive?
So we actually received a response from them saying that they were not submitting a response. So I just documented that we actually heard from 2 additional companies that were technically non-responsive.
I got an answer. I never heard of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
They thought it was an RSVP.
So tell me the 5 entities and there was not a requirement that you respond to the RFI to be included in the ITN, correct?
That is correct. No part of the RFI will, I mean, while it will foreseeably guide the development of the ITN, there was absolutely no requirement.
Good enough. And who were the
Sure.
5 again?
So I'm going to do, unite us, and I will provide with the work plan in your next packet, kind of a brief iteration of who these folks are. Web author, I can let you know that web author is the primary for many of the other CSCs. MTX, they do a lot of work in our state and with several state agencies. Blackbaud and Oracle.
Very nice. Okay.
And
Thank
yep,
you.
absolutely.
Excellent. Any other questions or discussion on the RFI update? Next on the agenda, it says committee appointments. Somebody's going to have to explain the committee appointments to me.
That was what's on the screen. So Mr. Watts
Can't
is.
get anything past me. I have a trained legal mind.
So we had at one of the previous meetings, Mr. Chair had talked about the subject matter experts that would be the ones to develop the work plan. Again, this is not precluding the evaluation and the nomination committee, committees that, not nominations, excuse me, evaluations and negotiations committees that we will have council participation on. This is just to make sure that the three of us are not the ones that are developing something that's very highly technical. We want to have the smartest people that we can possibly find in the room that will not bid potentially on what we're trying to develop.
Outstanding. Terrence,
Yep.
we're in your able hands. Thank you so much for taking that role on. I appreciate it very much. Special presentation on insurance. Ms. Green, you're recognized to introduce Mr. Japp for us.
Yes, at the last meeting, the council asked for a presentation on insurance. Since that time, we have been speaking with Greg Japp, who is Executive Vice President of Brown & Brown Insurance. He is going to do a brief presentation on what we currently have and what he believes we need.
Thank you.
Greg.
Good afternoon. Greg Japp, Executive Vice President of Brown & Brown Insurance. Love that you guys kept me the insurance guy towards the end of the meeting, so bear with me. So if you were struggling through the real estate presentation, then by all means. But just a couple brief comments before we get started. So we were engaged about a month ago to review the current insurances that were in place. And so I've done that. I'll talk a little bit briefly about that towards the end. And then obviously we'll go through the proposal, and I will go as fast as I can, but please stop me if you guys do have any questions. And on the very first, you guys do have a physical copy in front of you. But the one thing I would mention that we did try to do with these quotes and proposals that you're looking at on the cover page, we're presenting a 3-1 to a 10-1. And the reason why we did that was to keep it concurrent with your physical year or your fiscal year. So with that, keep that in mind as we're going through it. And the actual coverages will start on page 3. So at the very top of every page, you'll see the carrier that we're presenting. So the carrier that we're presenting for all the lines of coverage is called Pidget, which is also known as the Preferred Government Insurance Trust. So, and I have some financial information for that, but that is a governmental trust that was started in 1999. It's a non-assessable fund. And the very first page that you see here is the crime, or what's also known as fidelity or employee dishonesty coverage. So the limits that we're quoting are all standard limits that we would recommend. And of course, they can be changed. The limits are obviously up to the board as far as what you guys choose, but this is our professional opinion of what we would recommend. So a $500,000 limit for employee dishonesty, for forgery alteration, as well as theft of computer fraud. And that would also include funds transfer fraud that has a $1,000 deductible. And I also should have mentioned before too, is in a separate cover, I did send the specimen policies. That is 232 pages. So if you need some reading documents for your sleep to put you to sleep, I would highly recommend it. But I also did want to make sure that's available for you guys if you do want to send that out after our presentation. If there's no further questions on page 3, let's move forward to page 4. This moves into the liability coverages, and it's a couple different things. So general liability is going to be for your bodily injury or third-party property damage, and also hired non-owned autos. So I know we don't have any owned autos, but it also covers the auto exposure that we have currently, and as well as employee benefits liability, which is the E&O of the open enrollment of the health and wellness plan. Again, here, very standard limits. A few things that I'll point out, $1 million per occurrence. And you'll see there's no general aggregate, so we can have multiple claims throughout the policy period. Most standard commercial general liability policies do have an aggregate. This one does not. And the other thing that I'll note is it's first dollar coverage. There is no deductible for general liability. The only deductible that would apply would be for the auto coverage, $2,500. And the one thing that I would mention here, and I'll say this again at the very end of this presentation, is you guys are subject to sovereign immunity, which I believe right now is currently open for discussion in the legislative session. So a lot of the carriers that we went to for quotes, this is the most coverage they're willing to afford right now until there has been a decision. And at that time, we'll have a lot more further guidance on what that looks like and if we can provide excess coverage. But just with the uncertainty of what that right now, that's the most that the carriers are going to provide. Moving into page 5, another I highlighted in bold, a very strong point of this program is defense is outside the limit of liability. So that $1 million per occurrence limit, the majority of the claims that we typically see are going to erode defense. So defense is not going to erode the $1 million limit of liability. And like I said before, it's first dollar defense. The way that the carrier generates the premium is a portion of the payroll. And I pulled the payrolls out of the most recent copy of the budget. So the great feature about this policy is it's not also subject to an audit. So it's just a starting point. And every year, if you do decide to renew this policy, we'll have to start over. Moving on to page 6. This is extremely important. This is the public official's liability, also known as the D&O or the professional liability. Again, we quoted $1 million limit. It's subject to $0 retention. So it's first dollar coverage and defense is outside the limit of liability. What I did put in the appendix is there is a panel counsel that if there is in the event of a claim that you do have to choose from. So I did put the panel that's approved in the back for you guys to review. And also this is based off of the payroll exposures, which would have to be revisited every single year. Moving forward to page 7 is the employment practices liability, or also known as the EPLI. Very similar to some of the other coverages that we discussed. Currently has $1 million liabilities, what we're proposing, no aggregate. And also very nice feature is its first dollar coverage. So 0 retention. Moving into page 8, standard exclusions apply, and this policy is rated on the number of full-time employees. So we base it off of 4 full-time employees. Moving into page 9 is the cyber liability. So we quoted a $2 million limit of cyber liability, which covers not only first-party coverages, but as well as third-party coverages. And from a retention standpoint, it's a $25,000 deductible, or there also is a 10-hour waiting period for business interruption. So that is on the higher side for retention. So we are expecting another quote for cyber liability, just so you guys can potentially see a few different options from a cyber liability standpoint with a much lower retention. So expect to have those back probably in the middle of next week. Page 10 goes through some of the terms and conditions of the cyber policy. And then the following page after that is the guaranteed cost template for the workers' compensation. Also is based on payroll, $0 deductible, statutory coverage. So pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, let me know on that. And then I'll stop for a second on page 12. So this is a summary of the proposed premiums, and based on the information that I have, you'll see in the middle column, which is the current coverages. And this is what I was provided. So I don't want to basically talk too much on what I think is currently in place, just because I don't have those policies. But currently, I don't think there's a crime or fidelity policy in place. There is a general liability policy that's in place. However, I will mention it's a premises liability only policy. So it's very, very limited. It covers this premises, and I also think one other premises. So there's no products completed operation. So it's something that definitely needs to be entertained at some point, especially if you guys do move into a separate space, but it also has an exclusion on it, which is called a designated premises. So if you're out in the community, the coverage doesn't follow you. It's very limited in the sense where it only covers this premises and one other premises. Same thing. I didn't see any auto coverage. And the public officials and employment liabilities information that I received, it looked like it was only a quote. So I didn't see that coverage was actually physically bound. So I tried to illustrate that at the bottom of the summary of the premiums. Then, of course, the cyber liability, I didn't see any cyber, but the only other policy that I did see was placed was the workers' compensation, which is in place and it's been in place since January. So I guess I will stop kind of right there and pause. The other thing with this program is you guys continue to grow as an organization. With adding property or contents, the property can expand. But this is just kind of a general, place where we've recommended coverages and would just open it up for some questions or comments.
So I am going to leave. Ms. Clay, I just asked you to recognize that we still have a quorum.
Right.
And I appreciate so much. I'm going to ask Dr. Glenn to take the imaginary gavel. And I appreciate so much. And I'm sorry that I have been called away. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Just a quick question, not about coverage or limits, but more on just the math. I'm looking at the proposed rate or collective rates on page 12. You have a 10-month prorated collective rate of $79.98. But then you have an annual of $13,530. The math doesn't work out 10 to 12, so I'm assuming that that's more than.
So there is a typo. So the prorated premium is actually 7 months. It's 3/1 to 10/1.
That makes sense.
So I apologize for that. And it's also important to note. So typically this program runs 10/1 to 10/1. So it will at the end of if you guys did elect to bind the coverage, you can bind it anytime. It could be after 3/1, it could be before 3/1. The premium would be prorated, but at 10/1, we would have to put it back out for quotes to get renewal quotes too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I have a question, and I know the answer, Sika, but I'm asking it so everybody else gets the benefit of the question I asked you the other day. How many agents did we ask to prepare a proposal for us?
Right. So when, and I'm gonna make this short, I promise. So when Ted was in the interim role, he engaged an insurance firm. I think things were moving pretty slowly. And when I came on board, we tried to move a little bit faster. When we brought the subject up last month, Council Member McFadden suggested that we look at Brown and Brown. And so we did. So when I met with Mr. Mitchell yesterday, we are going to look at another insurance firm just so that we have that transparency and we can get a comparison very similar to what we did for the sites that I showed you today. So we only did this one at the suggestion of the council member. However, we'll get the other quotes.
Yeah, and here's the thing. One, and I'm purposely not looking up. I think Brown and Brown is a fantastic organization, and I've done an awful lot of work with Brown and Brown, and I think it's great that they are one of our presentations. But like everything else we do, we have to, and this is not a criticism of your proposal, which, by the way, they're all kind of plain vanilla. There's nothing special about, anything that we're seeking here. But because we have been entrusted with the public's funds, it's incredibly important that we have more than one option. And we really kind of already have two options. The first was less than plain vanilla, I'll say. This is a good proposal. And I think if we have one more good proposal, again, this is one member of the council, I'd feel more comfortable.
All right, any other comments?
Well, let me ask a question, Madam Co-Chair. The other proposal that you're mentioning, Mr. Mitchell, that's one that was engaged by Ted Granger?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so
Yes.
we do have that proposal.
We do, because, so That insurance was done kind of piecemeal, if that makes sense. So it was this piece, that piece, this piece, and then like nothing. And so then when I came on board, we need to move with these other pieces. And yeah, so when he said that he was operating off of 2 quotes, those were the 2 quotes that we finally
But
got.
what we have today from Brown and Brown covers all the areas that.
Yes.
That you were concerned.
It is
Okay, good.
variable.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I said plain vanilla, but
Right.
that's as much a compliment when it comes to insurance as
Absolutely,
as anything.
And then I believe, I'm sorry, and if I may, Greg, I don't know if you want to jump in here, because we did talk a little bit about some pricing that you had done, some quotes that you had done maybe
Sure.
when you were
that's-
looking at.
Yeah, so that's
to even
what
get
they're
to
that's
here.
what they're looking at. I mean, that's the primary concern that I have when I saw the quotes that Ted had actually forwarded over, is there was a private D&O quote, and then there was a separate public official quote. So both of them were quotes, and I couldn't tell if any of them had been bound. The only thing I could tell that was bound is I have a deck page for general liability policy, which is very insufficient. And then there is a workers' compensation policy, which I did check on the proof of Florida coverage, has been placed. But anything other than that, I think you guys would be in your best interest just to check and see if there's been any other coverages that have been bound and actually placed, especially D&O or public official liability.
Can I just ask one more question?
Absolutely.
So all of the analysis is based on the financial part of the portfolio, the Children's Services Council, as well as the number of employees, or just the overall financial portfolio?
Correct.
Both?
Which one?
So are you talking about how the policy is rated, or?
Right, absolutely. The
Sure. So
overall
depending on the line of coverage, they're all rated a little bit differently.
Mhm.
So as far as the general liability is rated off of payrolls, it's very similar to the workers' compensation.
Okay.
And then the employment practices off the number of full-time employees. So they're all a little bit different, but I can tell you where we pulled the bank of the information is from the website, off of the bylaws and off of the budget. So it was information that we took upon ourselves to basically to seek out, if that helps.
Thank you. So the budget is a major component of it, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chef. Of course.
I want to follow up. I fully support Mr. Mitchell's recommendation to look at other firms, a couple of proposals, but for the immediate future, are we at risk of exposing ourselves with not having coverages that we should have in place now?
So the quick answer is yes. When I came on board, Ted had been working for several months trying to get the surety bond put in place, and some of the other insurances that we see quotes on, but we don't actually have an agent engaged. So I am concerned, and we'll be moving very quickly to get those other quotes in so that we can ensure that we're adequately covered. And so when we contacted Brown and Brown, they worked very quickly to get us those quotes and looked at what we had. So we have basic of what we need, but do we have what I believe we need just from, and again, this is just my first interaction. I think that we will be moving very quickly.
Mr. Hanna, I will say, this is just an area that I spend a lot of time in. I don't think we're in danger, and the biggest reason is we have not awarded any money yet. But having said that, and this is why I said that we technically have 2 proposals. One I would suggest was non-responsive for a different reason than the RFI was. So we have a second, and again, I think highly of Brown and Brown, but I really, one, I want at least one more proposal, and 2, I think timing is now starting to get very critical.
Absolutely.
I agree, but we have, I guess, officially 2 employees and 2 contracted employees.
Three contracts, our general counsel,
So if something
CPA.
happens to one of them,
Well, all of the contract employees
are 1099 or a specific contract. We have 2 employees, but we do have workers' comp coverage, right?
That's correct.
We do have that.
And in liability coverage, if one of our employees hurt someone.
Well, when you say hurts.
Well, that's what it's saying. Any intentional act is going, any intentional act is going to be excluded on any policy.
If they're driving to
They're driving to meet a client or to go to one of our conversations or.
Correct.
It's workers'
So we don't
Not-
have any automobile, anything.
Or even like general liability, we have, you guys have
General
coverage
liability.
right here from a premises liability. So
Right.
on my way out, if I slip and fall and I have bodily injury, then you guys have coverage for that. But the extent outside of that, based on the services that you're providing to the community, which would be probably hard to conceive that would cause third-party bodily injury or property damage, no, you do not have coverage for that.
So as another example, when we go to Raw Middle School and I ask you for, give me an insurance policy in case someone gets hurt at one of these meetings, we had anything that would cover that?
And not based on my review.
We would have to engage that.
Yeah. that's
That like one time, yeah. Which is why we have it here. Yeah.
And the one thing I would say,
Sir, you are, I think that this should have been an issue that we addressed earlier, but we sort of are where we are. And I think it is a very safe roll of the dice. I am comfortable waiting until we get one more presentation.
So the question of timing, it shouldn't take us long to get it there.
No, in fact,
So from a timing standpoint, when's our next meeting?
But not till March, though.
March 24th.
We won't have the opportunity to look at the other
So
quote.
do we want to
maybe give the
chair and along with the director, the ability
that's a
to
great
take
idea.
action on
It's in the bylaws.
equivalent coverage on the best rate. Can
Okay.
we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear from our attorney. Did you hear the question? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Can we do that?
The statute governing the Children's Service Council requires that the council approve expenditures. So if you basically approve the expenditure today, perhaps up to a certain dollar amount, you can.
Well, I
do
say
it.
we'll approve the expenditure not to exceed
Yes.
the bid rate that would be given today.
Don't do that just yet, and I'll tell you why, and you can correct
Okay,
me.
I'm
This is based
certainly-
on,
You-
this is a
Oh, this
quote.
is there. You
Yeah,
understand
this
what I
is
mean? Why
not-
don't you Put together.
I want to just make sure that you've done a great job based on the information you've been provided. The information you've been provided is not as full a picture as you are going to want. This may go up a little, so I would just say,
Why don't you put a motion together?
okay,
I'd be more comfortable with that.
Well, do we need, Madam Chair, do we need a
I'll
motion?
second it.
Do we need a motion at this point?
Hold on.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I do want to address Ms. Cummings and her question is, do we need to do this? Do we need a motion? And it's my understanding that we need it because we don't want to wait until the end of March when we can meet again to get the second quote, because then we won't have coverage in case something happens.
Can I take a stab at a motion?
Quicker than that.
Let me take a stab at a motion.
Go ahead.
I would like to authorize the chair, along with our executive director, to enter into a contract with that one, we get 3 quotes from insurance agencies for our insurance coverage, and that we authorize you and the chair, Judge Sostrom, to select amongst those 3 with a fee not to exceed $25,000
Annual.
annually. Right.
That's significantly higher than what we have here.
I don't think we're ever gonna, as the treasurer, you know how I am always very conservative.
Yes.
We're not gonna get there,
Okay,
but I don't want to, well,
yeah.
it just $25,000. I know that Judge Sostrom and Ms. Green are going to be,
To make a reasonable.
So you're just trying to do a,
for coverage not less than what is being
Yes.
presented here?
Yes, I
'Cause
would
I
add
think
that.
everything in here we want,
Yes, we do.
right?
Okay, so please restate your motion.
Sure, I would like to authorize the chair and the executive director to receive 2 more proposals. So a total of 3 proposals for insurance coverage that is comparable to the coverage that is found in the proposal by Brown and Brown, and that they are authorized to negotiate amongst those 3 at a fee not to exceed $25,000 annually.
Thank you for that motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All right. Thank you very much for
That should
that.
give you comfort as well, Superintendent.
All right, and I agree. Thank you all so very much. Do we have any other discussions?
Nice job.
Well, no,
Thank you.
I just think that what the 25,000 is to give them latitude
Yes.
To be
to look at the 3
flexible.
proposals
I
and
just
come up
did-
with the best
I
one.
said 15. I
We
was
didn't
like,
want to tie their
oh,
hands. Okay,
I was thinking 15. Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I understand.
Any opposition?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so that motion has passed. We are giving you all the authority to please get 3 quotes total, and then you all make a reasonable decision for coverage that's applicable to this. Okay,
All right.
wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you all for negotiating and making that happen. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, moving on. We are moving on with our council policies. So I'm going to turn this over to Sika to provide a summary, and then Holly will provide some additional detail.
Yes, so very quickly, you've had these and I don't know that, and they're in the packet and they've been sent out to you guys. The only change in there is changing the title office manager to administrative services manager, which was the title that we landed on. And also just want to advise that after speaking with Chris, the general counsel, we will do a resolution. It is his guidance that a resolution come before the council when we've got all of our policies in place. At this time, we've got our basic policies in place, so it's really just an approval of those policies. And so Holly, if you want any other summaries on what's in there, Holly's.
So
Oh.
I was just going to do a quick review.
What we read?
Yes, she's.
Okay.
she's
I was
going
just
to.
super quick. So the
Okay.
very first one, talent selection, it covers 3 primary things: application requirements, methods for evaluation, and that kind of probationary period, the onboarding kind of process. We talked about it a little bit at the last meeting, but so again, no changes were submitted by any member of the council between then and now. The second one is related to attendance and leave. So that stipulates holidays, personal days, leaves of absence, annual leave, sick leave, caregiver leave, et cetera, leave without pay, all of those. And I'll remind that we built most of that from what was available from Leon County. That was the advice and guidance of the council back, I want to say in October, I believe it was. So we built where we could. We did not include things that are designed for much larger organizations like sick leave pool and things like that. As we grow, if that's something that you want to amend in later, that's something that we can do. The third policy is team member conduct. So this is adopting very specific policies around EEO, workplace harassment, violence prevention, et cetera, and just kind of going into some of those clauses. Again, the majority of these were taken and from Leon County as our basis for that. And then the final policy that's in there is for device management, for information technology, just registration, security measures that we will have in place as we are purchasing equipment to house for staff. So those are the 4 policies before you and asking for approval that were presented previously.
Thank you.
Well, so.
Go ahead.
So you're not really asking for approval because it's going to come back in the form of a resolution that we will move in. and
Right, it's
adopt.
just an approval that this is
Got
what
it.
we can use until we get our final resolution with other policies.
So if you go back to Holly's first screen, there were a couple of things that stood out to me. One, a 36-hour work week. 36-hour work week. When did the work week become 36 hours? I thought it was a 40-hour work week, but it's listed here as the CSC has a 36-hour work week. And I don't think that's, does the county, is that your work week is I know the commissioner is 24 hours a day, always on the clock, but it's a 36-hour work week. It's listed in the document. I just recommend we go to the standard 40-hour.
It's on page 27.
No, at least 36 hours.
Right. I just would like to say that it's a 40-hour. It's
Well, I think the reason we did that is because we were complying with what the federal government says is a full-time work week. And the federal government, at least the last information I got, says that full-time is considered at 36 hours. So we were trying to stay in line with that and not mandate a 40-hour work week if the federal government is saying that it's 36 hours.
It's actually 32 hours.
right. 32. I don't.
If that's the reason why, I have no idea why we would say 36 versus 40.
We modeled it after the county. It's no big deal. I mean, we can
I would like
change
it
it.
just to say 40. That's just, I don't, there, that was one thing. Then there is, in addition to the regular holidays, it gives the executive director the authority to authorize 4 additional days per year for each employee. So you get your annual leave collected, again, looks very standard. And then in addition to that, 4 more days?
Well, this was my thought on that. So if the 4th of July falls on a Thursday, I would like the discretion to give team members Friday off.
But that's, so if 4th of
That's
July,
usually vacation days.
but right, but 4th of July, if it falls on a Thursday, if someone wants to make it a long weekend, I'm just trying to think of like a state employee. What a state employee has to do is take a vacation day, take a personal day. I just thought 4 days.
Thanksgiving's always on a Thursday, so that.
Well, but in
Friday is
the
a
holidays, we
state
have
holiday.
Friday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So Friday is
As
now a
is.
state holiday.
I don't know what you guys is.
Okay.
Southern group doesn't do it.
Well, and if I might, for example, Juneteenth, I will go on record as saying that is very important to me. And I think that I should have the latitude to say we can take Juneteenth off. So it's not something I'm going to fight by no means. I would like to be allowed to have at least 2 discretionary holidays to be able to offer that to team members. However, it's the will of the council.
I just want to add as a state board,
Right.
sometimes the governor will give us those days because we don't automatically get New Year's, Eve. We don't automatically get Christmas Eve. Right. But sometimes, depending on who the governor is, we'll get those days. So like last year, we got those days. That's what I was assuming your discretionary days were.
Right, that's what it was
So
mostly
I
for.
wouldn't mind having a policy that followed if we're making folks part of state government, following state government. So if a state employee gets it off, then a Children's Services Council, and that you're right, Governor DeSantis has since he's been governor, and I think Governor Scott before him has given state employees, both of them have given them 1 extra day, and so that, but it's like the annual leave policy is a good policy. It's not like you don't get any extra days off. It's above and beyond that.
Ms. Cummings?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My thought is this, the administrative portion of the Children's Services Council is going to be very small, and I understand that we look at what the state does, what the governor does, even what the county does, but we're talking about a very small staff where they're going to be interacting on a very intimate level for the most part because of the small space that they're in, which is something totally akin from county government, state government. So I don't have a major problem with allowing the executive director the discretion to allow the employees, and of course, she's there, she's over everybody, she knows the needs. She knows when it's best for somebody to have extra day, when it's best for them not to during Christmas, during Thanksgiving, or whenever. So I don't think with her, her limited budget for the employees, I don't have a problem. I think she should have that discretion. Because it's on a more of a, I guess, intimate work relationship in that office. They're going to be interacting, covering each other. And when I read the proposal, they're not going to just all be in that office. They're going to be out in the field, looking at service providers, looking at services that are being provided, looking at whether or not benchmarks are being met, that type thing. So I don't have a major problem with her having that discretion for less than 10 employees, or perhaps less than 7 employees.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. Mr. Bryant.
So I'm a product of the private sector. I've always been in the private sector and don't quite understand all the nuances of holidays and days off, et cetera, that come with government. But that being said, I do look at the aggregate. So when we talk about holidays, vacation days, et cetera, what are the total number of days, holidays and vacation days that we're allotting to colleagues, employees? That to me, that's what really was. How many days off do you get?
So in the proposal, it depends on two things. One, if you are sort of a senior manager and you get
Line
more.
employee. What is the line employee?
The other thing is depending on your duration, your tenure with the CSC, it goes anywhere from, in your first year, you get 12 days. It says 96 hours. Here it's 8 hours per month. So 96
days of vacation.
A vacation
And
plus.
how many days of holiday?
But it's accrued monthly.
Plus, ooh, gosh.
I think there's 12.
You got sick leave, you
Right.
got annual leave, but
12,
it's
say how many
accrued.
Plus.
Plus.
four?
Yes, so that is what the proposal
So
says.
it's 12 plus 4. That's a lot of days. Because these are work days, right?
Yes.
These are, so that's 6 weeks of vacation a year. Right.
Well,
Is my math right?
Just
12 plus 6, that's 30 days.
So
12 plus 4. So that's
Well,
20,
12
just
plus
under.
4.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's 28.
28.
So 28, that's still a lot. For a starting employee, that 28 days off paid, that's a lot of days.
Yeah, I really do. Everything looks very much like a state employee, other than the additional 4 days. And Commissioner Cummings, I don't disagree with you that there is a sort of an intimacy to a small organization like this. But I also say we're being watched. And I think
that's over
rightfully
5.5
so.
weeks of vacation a year.
Yes, sir.
That's a lot of paid vacation.
So I go back to.
I'm just looking at this from a private sector.
It's the government.
I'm still kind of like, I'm reeling at this number of 28 days of paid vacation.
By the way,
It
that's in
depends on your
in
position.
First year, it goes up every.
Wow, that's a lot.
It depends on the
Green?
position.
I'm sorry, let's recognize Sika.
may I just say, given the conversation that we just had about staffing, it appears to me that we're going to keep the staff pretty small. With that, that means there is a lot of work that the staff is going to be doing. In some cases, if you are exempt, you won't earn any kind of overtime, no comp time, no nothing. And so I would simply like the ability to grant some time if it looks like people have really been working and working and working. Of course, in my position, I have worked, and that is fine. I totally get it. But in some of the other positions, I just would like the discretion to be able to do that. just because they are there does not mean that I am going to use them. I would just like the discretion to do that. And so maybe if there is a middle ground, instead of 4 days, maybe 2 days, to have discretion to be able to reward a team that I know is going to be working very, very hard.
Thank you for that. That's what I was going to bring to the table, what you all consider 2 days, which I think is reasonable. I do feel some kind of way about 4 days. I do think that's quite a bit, but I do think 2 days is reasonable to say you have the ability based on performance, rewards, whatever it is that they do, and to be able to say, okay, we're gonna, give this day. But I do think 4 days is quite a bit. 2 days, I do think is reasonable. I'd love to hear
I
from you.
would just caution you, Sika, that, there's no way I would do this with a large organization because you have everybody and their mother coming to you that wants this day. If you've already targeted the day in June, I would probably suggest that you go ahead and we're going to give you 2 more days. You go ahead and put those 2 days on the calendar because you're going to have people from other diverse backgrounds and other ethnicities and other religions that are going to want their day as well. I would just caution you that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
here's what I would feel comfortable with. The exactly the annual leave policy and the sick leave policy that you've developed, which is very consistent with other organizations employing public employees in Leon County. In addition, allowing you to give as you see fit, like in addition, one additional day that is to the employee's decision as to, in your case, if you wanted Juneteenth, you could take Juneteenth. A lot of people like their birthday off. They could take their birthday off. So that would be above and beyond the 12 state holidays that are being given, plus the annual leave that they begin to accrue. And the only other thing that I would mention is that in addition to the one personal holiday, in the event that the governor, and he lets people know ahead of time, gives additional time off to state employees, that you would be able to give that same time off to the employees of the Children's Services Council, which if you were to just do last year, there would be 2 additional days that were given to state employees, which would bring the 12 up to 14. And so that's where I should be good. One personal holiday above and beyond all the other ones.
So it's looking like the council does not have issue with the talent selection and the team member conduct and the device management policies. But I do think we would like to see a revisit to the policy on leave and attendance. So I ask that you all take that back and rework that policy and then allow us to be able to see that one final time to make sure we're comfortable with that. Does everybody agree with that? Okay.
That's fine.
So what I am proposing is that we would make a motion to approve them moving forward with the other policies that were discussed today, but we will not move forward with the leave and attendance policy until we've had an opportunity to revisit that.
Madam Chair, I move that.
Okay.
I second.
All right. So this motion has been approved. It's been a second. Any comments? Okay. All right. So we are moving forward with the policy, those other 3 policies with the revisit to leave and attendance. Thank you all very much for that. Oh, well, do we need a public comment? Did I miss that opportunity?
I did glance over my shoulder and ask. They all shook their head no, and there's no
public.
cards.
Okay, thank you for glancing. I missed that. All right, thank you very much. I just want to go on the record that we did allow for public comment. All right, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we are going to look forward to our next meeting dates. So we have 2 meeting dates coming up, one on Thursday, March the 24th, and then the following one will be on Thursday, April the 21st, right here, same station, TCC, right? Okay, that's where we will be on those dates. So any questions or comments about the meeting dates? All right. Let us review our next meeting agenda. Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you if you would please review the agenda for the next meeting. I would like to indicate that, never mind. I take that off the table. I was going to add that we wanted to see the additional insurance policy quote, but we took that off the table by giving you all the authority to do that.
It'd be nice to see what we picked.
Okay, well, we do want to see,
That could be in-
okay.
That could be in Sika's
Give a report.
That was,
Right.
I was saying that parenthetically when I made my motion, and she'll report back.
She will.
Sounds good. All right, please review the agenda item for our next meeting.
Okay, so we expect to have a budget amendment at our next meeting. We expect to have a contract for office space. We hope to have the confirmation of those who will participate in which listening sessions. We will also bring back the guidance, guidelines for the listening sessions, and also a bit of an agenda, so you'll know how those are going to run. As part of the needs assessment, you will receive and review a draft provider relations guide. And that guide will include accountability and monitoring plan for funding recipients based on approved methodology for community investments. I had to say all of that. We will also review and approve enterprise solution work plan. We'll have a special presentation by Liz Joyner from the Village Square, and it's about a bridge builder project that they're working on. They want the CSC to become a piece of that. We will bring back the insurance policy that we approve. We will bring back the rewritten attendance and leave policy. And I think, did I get everything? Oh, and our admin costs, but that'll also be in the budget amendment. Yeah. So the admin costs for the proposed positions, as well as any revised positions, we will bring back as well.
Thank you. So we
think
will
I got
have a very
everything.
full agenda for the next meeting.
Yes,
Thank
but,
you.
but we'll try to move it.
No, I
Yeah, and
appreciate
get you
that.
everything ahead of time as well.
So we can review in advance. Thank you. And one additional request, any slides, please include those in the packet because my eyes are aging. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, with that, do we have any member comments?
I don't have, can I ask a question?
You absolutely can.
So the Eventbrite, is that what
Yes.
where we're gonna start getting the invitations to the community? Did I misread what the dates were when they began, the four? Oh, holy mackerel,
Don't blame.
look at that.
Here we go.
Okay, so we will have a meeting before the first one.
Yes.
Okay, that's,
And you will email that to us, correct?
Yes,
Schedule.
you'll get an Eventbrite invitation. And when you open that up, you will pick the dates that you will attend.
And I do have a question for you, Sika. Are you requesting that we attend at least one?
It would be nice if
Yeah.
every council member could attend at least one.
But we can attend up to all four? Okay, just
Absolutely.
wanted to be sure. Okay, thank you very much for clarifying.
You get prizes for the more.
You do not get prizes as volunteer members of the council. You'll get a name
You get an
tag,
extra day off.
and I will bring some chocolate.
Very good.
Thank you for that. Any other member comments?
I have a
Yes.
question for our treasurer.
Absolutely.
When we arrive at the full 0.5 bills, what is your estimated revenue?
Well,
on current property tax?
if it had been this year, the year that we're in, based on the assessments, it would have been just like 9 million, 9.1, and I'm basing this on memory from running the numbers. I think it was 9.1 million.
So,
It will be more next year, because
so let's
we just
let's
keep
say
adding.
let's say just for
Simplicity's sake.
but it's $10 million.
Yes, sir.
As the treasurer and as someone that scrutinizes a lot of these decisions about, and I'm with you.
Right.
I'm
I know you are.
right there with you. Instead of browbeating about this position, that position, is there a certain percentage of that number in your mind that would be allowable for her staff, her facility, for the organization?
Well,
So if you said 10%, it's $1 million.
yeah, I wouldn't say 10%.
So that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
what would you say? And if I'm putting you on the spot.
You are. I'm not, but not in a bad way. I don't feel, yeah, the short answer is the comment I made about I want as much if of that, $6 million, if 5,999,999 went into the community to deliver programs to families in need, I'd be a thrilled man. So I don't have a set percentage. I would obviously want to keep it as low as possible.
Just as a reminder, I mean, it's the treasurer's role to provide recommendations and oversight of this, but it's this board's responsibility to do final reports.
No, I was just praying that you take
So-
it. He could actually not, you could be the treasurer. I'd still have the question for Mr. Mitchell, because I'd like to just have his opinion
Okay,
on,
okay.
and I don't know what other Children's Services Council, if it's 7%, 8%, 12%. I honestly don't know what that overhead number is.
Right.
Or when you go to a community goes, man, they're only spending, or 92% of the money is going back into programs. What is that number?
I think there's a philosophical issue there. I think it's what it needs to be to run this effectively. I think you could get too chintzy and not do proper analysis and direction and placement of dollars and end up basically squandering all the dollars out there. I think you can be too heavy and basically draw dollars away to provide administrative support that may be unnecessary. I think that's for us to learn. I think it's a learning experience. But I think the goal is to be the most efficient and effective collectively organization it can be. And I think that's going to be.
I agree. I just know that
it's going to be a learning process.
Yeah, I agree. I just know that if I was sitting in that seat, I would function a lot better if I knew, if you told me, okay, look, Rocky, you have $800,000. That's all you're going to get. You can have one person making 60, you can have two people making 30, you're going to have X amount for expenses. You're going to get $800,000 to run this organization. And if we aren't, and if you feel like
I think it's a moving target. I think,
all right,
given if we had 5 years of experience, I think it'd be a lot easier to say it should be 5.2% or whatever the number is. But I think where we are today, I think it's still like this. I think our job is to make sure that we are strong stewards of our community assets, but also strong drivers of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. I think that's all I can say at this point.
Chair Glenn. Oh.
No, go, Commissioner, go ahead.
No, Madam Chair, I agree with Mr. O'Brien and with Superintendent Hannah. But I believe what I'm hearing is that I don't think it would be a disadvantage if we just had some information that, to sort of guide us, not necessarily information that would propel us to move in any one direction, but I don't think it would be a harm for some guidance. And I know just in general, dealing with, in many instances, federal money, grants, what have you, I think generally they allow 15% for admin costs, administrative costs. There are other entities, maybe state entities, state of Florida entities or other organizations that receive grants, nonprofits receive grants and what have you. They are given direction and they are given parameters where they can expend a certain amount, up to a certain amount for administrative costs. And so I think it would be helpful if, and I'm not sure who would gather this information, but I think it would be helpful and it would be a great gauge of Superintendent Hannah if we had that type of
I agree with you,
information.
Ms. Cummings, because I know what was helpful for me was to hear how other agencies, use their dollars to, fund different programs.
Mhm.
And I never said, we're going to do exactly what you're doing. But I learned a lot from their experiences. So I do think it's very helpful to find out from other CACs, what percentage are they doing? What's working? like you said, 5 years down the road, we would be well informed. They're already there. They've already done this for 5 years, and we could learn some of those lessons from them. So I do think, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It benefits us to at least hear what they've done. We can take it or leave it, but it allows us to make an informed decision.
So how do we act upon it? Do we ask our executive?
So we
director to
have,
gather that?
we have that information and we can get that to you. I do, to that point, I will say that for CHSP, the city and county, they ask any organizations that apply need to stay under 22%. Anything over 22%, they have to explain why, because you're dealing with human services. From my former life, when we have applied for grants for funding, DOH only allows 5% admin, and there's some that will let you go as high as 10. The CBC in town, it's 9.5. So to that point, I could go on record as saying it would be great to know where you'd like for me to stay, but I would also be lying if I didn't say that I do have a little bit of angst of how we accomplish the recommendations and not have a team in place to help us do that.
That's why I said, I think we need some experience, because we can get, and believe me, I want to keep the expenses as low as we possibly can get with the most money out there. But again, at the end of the day, our job is to change the lives of children. And if we go so low that we're not adequately measuring the caliber and the quality and the outcomes of the programs, or the dollars are being spread so thinly across the board that we're really not having an impact on anything, then we're not being good stewards. So that's where I have no clue right yet where that number needs to be. It could be 5%.
And I don't think we do either.
I don't think it should be.
So that's what we're gonna do.
Well, let's
explore.
let me
Let's
just-
explore.
All right, hold
I
on.
do think that takes time for us to figure out.
So, and this might get to Superintendent Hannah's question to me. One, I don't think there is a magic percentage. Remember, at the Department of Education, if we drew down federal funds, the Department of Education could use 18%. We didn't use 18% for administrative cost, I can assure you. That's just what they called it. We stuck in a little kitty and we were able to fund programs, just like what we're talking about here. They went direct to programs. I don't think there's a magic number. I won't feel awful if the number is 10%. I won't feel great because it's 5%. I think this is evolving. The thing is, and I have a great deal of respect for CECA. And as we have conversations, I'm asking the question because I think it should be asked. And I think the public should know that there's some schmuck up here who's willing to ask the question. I'm doing it as much to have the question posed so that an answer comes back so that everyone feels comfortable, like, okay, they're not just wasting our money. So I know you didn't mean it critically, but the term browbeat, I'm not browbeating CECA at all. I'm asking the question the same way I ask myself the question when I'm spending or when I spent taxpayer dollars. And that is there a way I can do it better? Is there a way I can do it more efficiently? When I asked the gentleman from the real estate firm, the question I asked him, look, I know that building incredibly well. I know all the vacancies that as I'm looking at open space, could you take that the same needs and move it so we don't have 7 offices plus a reception? I mean, is there a different way of doing it? When it came to the needs assessment, I would I made the motion to up it. 2, I made the motion to move it from 250 to 300 because I think that's a good use of public dollars. But I think we should discuss it, and I think we should discuss it publicly. And CECA's great about taking my calls and meeting one-on-one and me getting comfortable with office space. I mean, sir, you offered it for free, and it was very generous of the district to do it. but I think she's appropriately looked for space that will be more convenient to the public. So that's,
Just a real question.
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
So the proposal that Seeker presented about the positions, which were kind of each year, it would be increased. So if the intent is for us to vote on that, no, right? That's not what the intent of that is, or?
It would be a part of the budget amendment because, of course, the council approves the budget.
Are you talking
That-
about Positions or the office space?
He's talking about the positions.
No, the positions, well, and the office space, because that will all be in the budget amendment. And so for the amendment that would come forward next month, it would just, if I'm able to stick with the plan that I've put in front of you, it would be approving just those two additional positions and then the office space piece. And then every year as the budget is formulated, additional positions would be added in if in fact it is determined that those positions are needed. If they are not needed, if we don't anticipate, then of course they wouldn't be added. The other piece is when we anticipate the position to be added. So for example, the DPO, I don't anticipate we would add it until September. So that is when that cost would start and then into the next year versus getting an amendment for it to start in March, April, May, and that person wouldn't be hired until September. So that is the thought process behind how the approval for those positions come to be.
So this budget that will be upcoming would only include the two positions.
The budget amendment will include
budget
the two
amendment.
positions. The budget that you start looking at for the next fiscal year
Right.
would include,
We would have to then review that again.
right,
So
it'll
then we
include the
would have that
positions
information,
approved.
say where we're at, so.
Right.
And that's why she color coded them. That was my understanding,
Yes.
to be able to see, this is what we're approving, we're asking for approval now, then these come down the line later, correct? And each different color will need a different conversation,
Yes.
correct? All right, that was my understanding.
If I could, Madam Chair, just a couple of things. Mr. Mitchell, one, brown beating was probably not the best use. of
I
time.
knew. I
But
did
you,
take
right,
care of
like
it.
you tell by reading the paper, sometimes what comes in here. comes
I've
out.
seen that.
And number two, I certainly don't think you're a schmuck, and I appreciate you.
Oh, I meant that as a compliment.
I shouldn't have asked that after 3 hours.
It's okay. All right, any other comments? All right, God bless you all. We are going to adjourn this meeting at this moment. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next month. All right.
Got the live stream cut off.
All right.
And the schmuck thing, Paul, it's on the day.
I
And the